Hi everyone and welcome to Bonnie Astrology. Today I'm going to be discussing the astrology of May 2025 and what it means for your zodiac sign. As always, if you do enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know that you like it. Subscribe to the channel for regular astrology content from me. And if you want to follow me on any of my socials, they are listed in the description box below, as well as how to book a reading with me. So without further ado, let's get into the astrology of May 2025. And after a rather tumultuous April, which featured a Mars-Pluto opposition, a new moon in Taurus forming a T-square with the Mars-Pluto opposition, Venus next to Saturn all month, Venus stationing direct under a full moon in Libra opposite Chiron and square Mars, Mercury going direct. It was quite a wild month astrologically, and March was quite a wild month astrologically. Now May has its moments, but May feels a little bit more chilled. And the reason for that is that it is Taurus season. Taurus season is all about taking things slow. It's about going for hikes in nature, going into your garden, being at one with your outer environment. It's about eating good food, nourishing yourself, getting back to basics, enjoying good music, enjoying the simple pleasures. And that's really our focus for most of May, because the sun shows us where our focus should be. The sun shows us what we're focused on, where we're putting our energy towards, what requires our attention. And in the sign of Taurus, that's very focused on what, we're doing to ground ourselves, whether that be going for that walk in nature, whether that be eating a nourishing meal, cooking your comfort meal, listening to your favorite song on repeat. Whatever the case may be, this month is about getting grounded. It also puts a lot of focus onto our finances. And we do have a full moon in Scorpio on the 12th, which is highlighting the financial axis in astrology. Now, like many full moons that we've had since 2018, it will be full moons in Scorpio that we've had since 2018, it will be opposite Uranus. Now, it's a wide opposition, so it's not felt as chaotically necessarily, but there is still this wild card energy with Uranus being in Taurus when it comes to our financial systems, when it comes to what is valuable. That fluctuates and changes a lot with Uranus. When it comes to online banking with Uranus, when it comes to crypto, alternative financial matters, that all comes under Uranus in Taurus, and the full moon in Scorpio is amplifying that and any tension that is existing with that at this time. Obviously, finances were a big part of the Venus retrograde cycle. A lot of people were reflecting on their financial setup, what they're spending money on, what has value to them, what does not, savings goals. And with Venus conjunct Saturn for most of April, a lot of it was about reining in spending and really, becoming very serious about money matters. Now, this full moon in Scorpio is highlighting money matters, and it will be ruled by Mars in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius, because Scorpio has both a modern and traditional ruler. So with Mars being in Leo, this puts a spotlight on financial matters pertaining to leadership, people in positions of power. With Pluto in Aquarius, this puts a focus onto the power of the people and society as a whole. And they obviously have been going through this oppositional energy thanks to the Mars retrograde period, which we experienced for the first 2 months of 2025 and the last month of 2024. So there's a wider story going on with this. And Mars and Pluto are separating from their opposition. But this full moon can bring a bit of clarity as to what that was all about. It can bring a little bit more information to the fore. It is in a very secretive sign, so if there have been financial secrets or secrets when it comes to governments, leaders in particularly, but also charities with Pluto in Aquarius, these financial matters can come to the fore. Now, in your own personal life, you might find that this full moon can, of course, be a time of shadow work and working through some tough emotions that maybe you feel ashamed of or you don't like to look at. Full moons in Scorpio can tend to bring out the tough conversations, whether they be about death, whether they be about taxes, joint financial matters, money. Full moons in Scorpio can sometimes expose these matters or bring them to the surface to be addressed. And I do feel, because it is ruled by Mars in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius, that sometimes change is not necessarily easy. That was also a message of the new moon in Taurus, but sometimes it can be necessary to get things out into the open with a full moon in Scorpio. Full moons in Scorpio can be a chance to connect more deeply with somebody else. As I said before, Scorpio rules the 8th house. It's about intimacy and it's about connecting with another person emotionally. So you may find under this full moon, because it is ruled by Mars, which is in a trine to Venus, it can be easier to connect with someone that you're in a relationship with, whether that be romantic, friendship, any kind of connection. You may find under this full moon that a relationship is deepening. And this could be a surprise to you because maybe you and this person have different values or you have very different economic backgrounds. But this full moon can, of course, bring about deepening of connections as well. And it's a lovely time to purge some emotions that you don't want to carry anymore, to purge some emotional baggage and let go and release something that has been giving you, it can be a time to face a fear with a full moon in Scorpio. It's also worth noting that at the time of this full moon, Pluto will have gone retrograde in Aquarius from May 4th at 3 degrees. So with Pluto being retrograde, this is about reflecting on our fears, reflecting on the changes we wish to make, reflecting on the transformations that we're seeking or that we have been experiencing since Pluto first entered Aquarius back in March of 2023. Now, speaking of March 2023, that is when Saturn entered Pisces, and Saturn has done a very clear stint in Pisces. Saturn goes through a sign for about 2.5 years, approximately. And this month, Saturn is actually entering Aries. Saturn enters Aries on the 24th. And this is a big deal because it's a very different energy to Pisces. Saturn is joining Neptune, and at this time, Venus will also be in Aries, and Chiron, of course, will also be in Aries. Saturn being in Aries is a very different energy to Saturn in Pisces. Saturn is a planet which loves to deal with consequences. It's a very karmic planet. It's a slow-moving planet, slow and steady energy. It's a planet of commitment. It's very serious. Aries as an energy is very speedy, very quick, loves a challenge, loves to act instantaneously, sort of leaps first and thinks about the consequences later. And this is something that a lot of people can experience under a Saturn in Aries transit, where you want to take a risk, where you want to do something irrespective of the consequences. And in Saturn in Aries times, the consequences catch up with you rather quickly. You know that old saying, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions. Saturn in Aries can really it can force you to look at the consequences of your actions, especially where they've been careless. The meaning of this transit is to really learn how to take a calculated risk, not being risk averse, not shying away from a challenge. In fact, Saturn in Aries is about embracing challenge, committing to challenge. But you may find under this transit that you need to form a calculated plan with Saturn, and that's where you get your best advantage from, with Saturn being in Aries. Aries rules the self, so this may be a time when you notice you have some headaches as Saturn transits into Aries, especially around the 24th. Watch out for headaches, migraines, that type of thing if you suffer from them. This can also be a time when you notice you start to take yourself more seriously when Saturn is in Aries. But Saturn rules Aquarius, so just be mindful of the fact that it is sometimes better to get by with a little help from your friends, and nobody is entirely self-made. There's usually someone that helps you up along the way, so don't forget them while you focus on your goals, and do allow others to help you when you're focusing on your goals. Huge focus on identity and the self with Saturn going into Aries. And I will do my own video on this that's a bit more in-depth of the themes, but you may notice them pop up in May with Saturn being in Aries. A lot of focus on the self, one's aesthetic, one's appearance can become a big focus with Saturn in Aries. And again, Saturn rules consequences, so we can see more of the consequences of identity changes such as cosmetic surgery and things like that while Saturn goes through Aries, especially as Neptune is there as well. So where people are perhaps, doing a lot of procedures and things, we can see consequences of beauty treatments, cosmetic procedures, those type of things with Saturn going in Aries. And more regulation maybe when it comes to the beauty industry, for example. But individually, of course, Saturn in Aries, I think my best advice is to exercise self-control. The more self-control you have under a Saturn in Aries transit, the better your outcome will be. So just bear that in mind as Saturn moves into Aries. Saturn is not going to be in Aries for too long. It does retrograde back into Pisces in September before settling into Aries in February of 2026. This is obviously going to affect those who have significant or prominent Aries placements the most, especially the moon. So pay attention if you have Aries moon, because this would be, in sidereal astrology, it's known as Sati Sati, and it is a very karmic time in your life. But Saturn crossing any point in your chart is quite a karmic moment of reckoning, and don't fear that, because it can actually have quite wonderful results in the long run. And speaking of Aries, if we hop right back to the beginning of the month on May 2nd, Venus and Neptune has just moved into Aries as of March, the last day of March, and this is the first time that Venus and Neptune connect in Aries in our lifetime, so pay attention to this date. I do think this is a time where you may notice more and more people investing money into their aesthetic. I mentioned before in the New Moon in Taurus video that there is this economic phenomenon where in times of recession, lipstick sales actually go up because people are more focused on spending their money on little luxuries rather than extraordinary luxuries or more lavish luxuries. And you may find with this Venus-Neptune conjunction that perhaps red lipstick becomes very popular with this particular transit, or you do notice that maybe you're investing a little bit more in cosmetics or clothes, something to really improve your appearance. This can also be an interesting time to watch the artistic industries and the new directions that they're going in when Venus and Neptune conjunct. There can be some sort of independent film maybe being released that's very popular. There can be maybe some sort of, film or music pertaining to war, pertaining to conflict that maybe is eye-catching, or this can be more of a focus on the individual when it comes to artistic endeavors and their independent sort of, with Aries, ballsy attitude, risk-taking creativity at the time of this Venus-Neptune conjunction as well. Mercury, the planet of communication, is in Aries for the first 10 days of the month. This is when communication-wise, we're very direct, we're very bold, we're very forthright, quick to anger, quick to discuss what they're frustrated about. Mercury moves into Taurus on the 10th, and this is when we start talking about money, we start talking about financial stability. You might notice yourself listening to more financial podcasts, reading the Financial Times, focusing on, getting more information about your finances and your money. It can also be a time when you're more focused on gardening, food, what you're eating, what you're ingesting, and wanting to spend more time, take more trips out to the forest, take more trips to the park, take more trips out in nature, with Mercury being in Taurus. The Sun shifts out of Taurus and moves into Gemini, and this is when things get very lively in the second half of the month. The Sun enters Gemini on the 20th, and that's where energetically we're really focused on communication. We can't read enough books, listen to enough podcasts, watch enough YouTube videos. We can't have enough discussions. We just want more information. We want to talk. We want to catch up. This is a great time to socialize in your local community, to network, to go to local events. If there is a fair in your town, if there is a networking opportunity when the Sun is in Gemini, it's great to go out and be social. And it can really put our focus onto having conversations with others, learning from others, or perhaps reading or writing matters as well. The Sun in Gemini, bear in mind that Jupiter is in Gemini, so this is going to amplify the energies of Jupiter, which means that we are feeling perhaps more chatty. This can also translate as more gossipy. There can be more room for social events. There can be more events in your neighborhood, getting to know your neighbors, connecting with your neighbors, that type of thing with the Sun in Gemini. When it comes to news, on the 24th, the day that Saturn moves into Aries, there's a Mercury-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. This can bring discussions about the financial system that can be quite surprising. This can also be to do with agriculture, but this can be a day of unexpected news and information. Mercury then moves into Gemini on the 25th, and this really amplifies the chatty energy. It's very chatty, as I say. It can go, in a gossipy direction. It can be a need for more and more information. There can be something going on in the news where you just feel so invested, you want to know everything about it, or you have a topic in mind and you want to read everything you can about it. It really factors into the new moon in Gemini, which is happening on the 26th of May, and that new moon is lively. It's quite fun. It's conjunct Mercury. There can be an event you're attending locally. You can be getting to know your neighbors. This can be a very chatty social time. That new moon in Gemini is a wonderful time to write your intentions down for them to manifest. Don't forget that Jupiter is still in Gemini at the time of this new moon. This is the last full month of Jupiter in Gemini, and I know that it's not been it's not been everybody's favorite. Jupiter is not so comfortable in Gemini, I know. But this is the time, May is the time, going into early June, This is the time when we notice the benefits of it, the manifestation of it. That's when Jupiter leaves the gift. And that new moon in Gemini can be when that manifestation is occurring, or this can be a time where, we make a wish and it happens kind of thing. But it comes through communication. It does come through, talking to people, getting to know people, writing things down, making a list, that type of thing. And the Sun connects with Mercury on the 30th for more lively discussions. The second half of the month is very lively, very chatty, very energetic, whereas the first half of the month feels a little bit more slow and a real strong need to be grounded. So as always, I'm going to pull a tarot card for the month ahead. I also just want to mention as I'm shuffling that Venus is in Aries all month, Mars is in Leo all month. Very passionate when it comes to relationships. This can be a month where there's a lot of focus on getting to know people, being very socially active, wanting to connect with people with similar interests. There can be taking risks in love. There can be... Ooh. Well, I guess we have our card. Judgment. This is the Scorpio full moon with Judgment. This is information coming to the surface. This is what has been buried coming to the surface. Especially with the Five of Swords underneath, betrayals may come to the surface. It feels as though, because the Judgment card is about Judgment Day, it's all the ghosts rising into the air in the traditional tarot Rider-Waite deck. So this can be a full moon about secrets coming out, meaning that it's a month of secrets coming out, because the full moon is felt for most of the month. It really, even when it's not the full moon itself, it's a background energy that's building or dissipating. And I think with this Judgment card, in fact, you can actually see the ghosts in this one rising. I do think this is about secrets coming out, and it is very linked to that full moon in Scorpio, because Judgment in the tarot is linked to Pluto, and Pluto is going retrograde this month. So there is an energy of secrets. There's an energy of information coming to the fore. And I guess, with that full moon in Scorpio coming before Gemini season, that maybe the secrets that come out, maybe the big reveals that come out are very much the point of discussion in the second half of the month. You get the information, you're sort of intrigued by it, maybe surprised by it, maybe not so surprised by it, as Uranus has been in Taurus for quite a long time. But this may be what people are discussing in the second half of the month. I think this month is going to be a big one in terms of reveals with that full moon in Scorpio. So that's one to watch. That is what I have for May, and I will talk to you soon. Hi Aries, welcome to your May 2025 horoscope. So Aries, this is a big month for you. And the reason for that is that, I need to mention the planets that you're hosting in your sign this month. So Venus is in your sign all month. That's beautiful. That's lovely. That means you may feel more attractive. You may find clothes, makeup, jewelry, hair, those type of things that suit you better. You're probably looking your best. You could be attracting a lot of attention romantically. You could be attracting a lot of gifts, a lot of abundance, that type of thing with Venus going through your sign. It's quite a lucky transit and you have it all month. So really make the most of that. If you are looking for new additions to your wardrobe, or to get a haircut, or to do something with your skincare routine, that type of thing is going to be very favored this month. Now, it's not just Venus is in your sign this month. This is the first full month. It's not the first full month, because you felt Neptune in your sign for all of April. It's the second full month of Neptune being in your sign. And this is a new energy that you're embodying. Whenever your first house is hosting an outer planet, you really embody the energy of that sign. So maybe with Neptune being in your sign now, you're feeling a little bit more psychic, a bit more spiritually oriented, a bit more interested in the spiritual side of life. You could be feeling a bit more daydreamy, a bit more floaty. You could be finding that maybe you're feeling a little bit confused at times, or a little bit foggy at times as well. Neptune can be a little disorienting at moments whenever you have it transiting the first. It is a long-term transit, so if it's not, hitting one of your personal placements just yet, it's sort of a background energy that you're embodying. But you might find yourself a little bit more interested in the spiritual and the intangible side of life. Now, in contrast to that, Saturn is entering your sign this month. Saturn enters Aries on the 24th, and this is where you may start to take yourself quite seriously if you're not already. When Saturn goes to the first house, it does make one very serious about their goals, about their responsibilities, about growing up. You know, regardless of what age you are, Saturn going through the first house is a very mature transit. It brings maturity. It means that you want to be more responsible, more accountable, more of an adult. You may have more time for your personal goals, especially for you guys, because Saturn rules your 10th house, your career. And going through the first house means that you really want to be self accountable. For a lot of you, it could be self employment. Over the next 2.5 years, you might want to be self employed. You might focus more on your personal goals, working independently, working alone, working on yourself, something of that nature. Aries, very invested in your own personal projects. It can also bring a lot of focus onto your identity and your image. Saturn going through the first can sometimes bring a little bit of insecurity when it comes to one's image, especially surrounding aging, for example, with Saturn. It tends to make us feel older whenever with Saturn going through the first house, regardless of age. But this can be a time when you really step up your skincare routine, you really step into an exercise program, you're really committed to taking care of yourself for your later years or for the future. You know, Saturn going through the first house is a time where people get very physically fit. It's associated with weight loss, oftentimes through committing to exercise or to eating better. It's taking oneself more seriously and taking one's goals more seriously. So this might be a time when you're maybe, you know, really focused on maturing your personal identity, branding. You know, you're very focused on yourself with, you know, Neptune there, Saturn there, and Chiron is of course still in your sign and gets you know, some activation this month. I think for a lot of you that can be working through any personal insecurities or lack of self, you know, be feeling insecure about yourself or your image. You know, this month with Venus going through your sign can really help you bring in some self-love and self-care, with so much activity focused on who you are, Aries. And Saturn is obviously going to retrograde back into Pisces a little bit later in the year and won't fully settle into your sign until early 2026. But for now, you might notice that energy quite quickly. Saturn going into your sign could maybe bring you some headaches or something of that nature, so be mindful of that as well. But aside from the focus on the self, there's a good bit of focus this month on your money, Aries. The sun is going through your financial sector until the 20th. Mercury enters your financial sector on the 10th. From the 10th to the 20th, you may be having a lot of conversations about money. You're thinking more about money. You may be thinking more about how you make money, the way that you make money. You might have some discussions with your bank. You might have some, you know, online banking activity going on, or maybe you're receiving a lot of payments if you're self-employed, for example, or maybe, you know, you're really focused on building your sense of security, especially as we're beginning this month in the aftermath of a new moon in Taurus, where you're probably focused very much on your financial stability. And if it's not to do with money, this can be to do with self-worth, self-confidence that you're very focused on building in May, Aries. This can also be a time where maybe you're focusing on your possessions and maybe you want to clear some things out, maybe you want to bring some things in. With so much happening in the second house, Uranus is there. We have the Sun-Uranus conjunction on the 17th. And so there might be some surprises with your money. Uranus going through the second house, it can be a bit unstable at times, but it can also bring in a lot of innovative ways to make money. You know, making money through ways you didn't expect, like online, on the internet, using unexpected talents that you have, for example. So this month may bring innovation financially. It can also bring a little bit of instability in places. Aries, especially around the time of that full moon in Scorpio on the 12th, it's going to be opposite Uranus, but quite wide. And the thing about Uranus is that when we have the Sun-Uranus conjunction, it tends to be where we're being ushered into a higher frequency. So you might be finding that you're wanting to raise your vibration financially, or to do with self-confidence. So you might be stepping into a more confident way of being, way of thinking, way of operating, trying something new, trying something a bit different. Maybe, for example, some of you want to make money online, but you don't feel confident enough to put yourself out there. And maybe with the combination of your 10th house ruler moving from the 12th behind the scenes into the first, you're thinking, do you know what? I can be more front and center. I can be the main character, and that's how you do this. But it can also be that you're really thinking, okay, I deserve more than I have. I deserve more than I'm getting, than I'm being paid for my services. That can be something with that Uranus Sun conjunction that really brings your vibration up. You want to operate in a higher frequency this month when it comes to your money and your self-worth. That full moon in Scorpio on the 12th at 22 degrees, it's an interesting one because a week prior, Pluto, which is the modern ruler of Scorpio, is going retrograde in your 11th house. So this full moon is highlighting your 8th house of joint finances. So this full moon could bring up significant matters pertaining to debt, money that you owe, loans, mortgages, grants, that type of thing could be highlighted under this full moon. Sometimes full moons can be a time where we clear these things. Sometimes full moons can be a time where we get to grips with the reality of a situation and see all that we need to see in order to make those changes. I think some of you might have an innovative way of making money for yourself that helps you clear out some sort of debt or clear out some sort of tricky money that you owe other people. However, it can also highlight your partner's finances, whether that be a business partner or a romantic partner, and there could be some changes happening there as well. With Pluto retrograde in your 11th house, I think for a lot of you Aries, you might be finding that you're really reevaluating your future, particularly your financial future, and how you want it to look or how you want it to feel. The 8th house with that full moon can also be to do with psychology and the shadow work that we're doing, especially in the sign of Scorpio. For some of you, you might have a bit of a breakthrough when it comes to some work you're doing with a therapist or in terms of your shadow. And this could maybe help you reevaluate again what you want for the future, because sometimes when you do, significant healing work, it can really change your vision for yourself. And again, with that Uranus Sun conjunction, you're maybe feeling like you're operating from a higher frequency of self-worth and self-confidence, and that could be changing, what you want for the future as well, or even how you, operate socially. With Pluto retrograde in the 11th, you're thinking about, who do I want to be surrounded by? Who do I want around me? With that retrograde in the 11th house as well. There is a new moon in Gemini on the 26th, Aries, which could bring for you perhaps a new car, a new telephone, a new gadget. It's likely for a lot of you it could especially be a new phone or a new laptop or something that you use to communicate. A lot of you might take a course, a workshop, or really focus on your communication style and how it's impacting you. Your ruler Mars all month is going to be in your 5th house, and it's going to be harmonizing with planets in your 1st. If you're looking for love, this is a great month to take action, to go dating, to go meet somebody, because Venus is in your sign, you're more attractive to love, you're more of a magnet to love. Mars is in your 5th house, Mars is your ruler, it's where you take action. Go on a date, ask somebody out, take a risk if you're single. It can also be that if you're in a relationship, maybe you want to put more action into dating your partner, trying something new, spicing things up, that kind of thing, with Mars going through the 5th house. It can also be for you if you have children, Aries, with Mars going through the 5th, they can act up a little bit more, they can be a little bit more temperamental. This can also be a time that if you have a creative project or passion, you really feel like you're putting all your energy into it. You might feel more creatively inspired. You might feel more energized to do the things that you love and the things that make you happy, Aries. Look out for the 30th with the Sun-Mercury conjunction in your 3rd house. There may be important news or important information for you. That is what I have for you, Aries. I hope you have a great month, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Taurus, welcome to your May 2025 horoscope. It is Taurus season. The sun is going through your sign until the 20th of the month, putting a lot of focus and attention onto you, focusing on yourself. You're the main character this month, Taurus. So what is it that you want for yourself? Now the sun does rule your 4th house of home and family, so maybe you're thinking about your home, maybe you're thinking about your family, what do you want, where do you want to put your attention, how do you want your home to look, how do you want it to feel, how do you feel in your space, How does that help you do the things you want to do or rest in the way that you want to rest? You know, how secure does your home base feel at this time, Taurus? Might be something on your mind, but very much through the lens of how is this helping you? How is this helping you shine? How is this helping you put yourself out there? So with the sun going through your sign until the 20th, obviously in your sign this month, we still have Uranus. Uranus is going to be leaving your sign shortly though. So pay attention to your horoscopes for that, because that's going to be a big change. But Uranus is still in your sign. The Sun-Uranus conjunction that we have annually happening in your sign is on the 17th. Now, the Sun-Uranus conjunction is a time where we can have shocks and surprises 100%. But Uranus wants us to operate at a higher frequency. Uranus wants us to level up. And sometimes that means doing something different. Sometimes that means doing something outside of the box. Pay attention to the 17th if you have an out of the box idea, if you have inspiration, if you feel like you're maybe vibrating at a higher frequency, roll with it. You know, just allow yourself to be pleased with you. Allow yourself to be unique. Allow yourself to be yourself. Because with Uranus going through your sign, Taurus, it's really saying, you know, you don't have to do things the same way all the time. Uranus going through a fixed sign has absolutely been a rude awakening for anyone who has fixed sign placements, because fixed signs are the most reluctant to change. But when Uranus comes in, Uranus says, it's now or never. This is what you need to do. This is a little bit different than what you're used to, but it's going to help you vibrate higher. It's going to help you reach a higher frequency. It's going to help you feel free. It's going to help you feel more like yourself. And so with this month, Taurus, your season, especially as we're just off the back of a new moon in Taurus that I'm actually recording this under, it's about resetting yourself and really taking charge of what makes you you, and embracing what makes you unique, and embracing the way that you want to do things yourself. Uranus is the modern ruler of your 10th house, and so Uranus, your 10th house ruler going through your sign, it's really where you're saying, I'm independent, I am myself. A lot of you may have become self-employed, a lot of you may have started working for yourself or gone in a very different direction than what people expected of you. And broken free from, you know, the normal career, or broken free from needing to be seen a certain way, you know, sort of, what is the expression? Marching to the beat of your own drum, Taurus. Mercury is in your sign, making you extra chatty from the 10th. And from the 10th to the 25th, Mercury in your sign means you might be feeling a bit more lively. You might have a lot of ideas. You might have a lot of inspiration, especially around the 24th when Mercury meets Uranus. You might have a light bulb moment. This can also be a time when you're maybe finding that you're, you know, talking more positively about yourself. Maybe more self-affirmations, really telling yourself who you are and who you're becoming and who you want to be, and really affirming it to yourself, Taurus. Now, that being said, we do have a lot of this focus on you, of course, absolutely. But the full moon in Scorpio on the 12th is putting the focus on your relationships, your partnerships. It's at 22 degrees, so if you have anything at 21, 22, 23, you're going to be feeling this full moon the most. And by those degrees, I mean of Scorpio or of Taurus, but also of Aquarius or Leo as well, if you know your birth chart well. That full moon is highlighting your relationships. So it's opposite the Sun and Uranus in your sign. And I think for a lot of you, you may find that as you're changing, as you're evolving, this can be a disruptor to partnerships, or it can disrupt partnership patterns, most likely. So if you've had patterns in relationships before that you don't want to continue, this can be a great disruptor of those patterns. This can be a time when you say, okay, I don't want to keep dating the same person over and over. What is it that they actually represent? What do they mean? And you can look at them more clearly under this full moon and say, oh, this is what this is. And I think with that full moon, pay attention, because it's ruled by Mars in your 4th house of home and family, and Pluto in your 10th house of career. So it's like mum and dad. You know, it's home life and private life, home life, and public life, career. You might feel like you notice a pattern in your relationships that played out with your parents or played out with a parent. And under this full moon, you might get the realization that you need in order to break a pattern in terms of people you're attracting, or in a personal relationship, you guys can say, oh, this is what the issue was. Okay, well, we'll try something else. That full moon can be very helpful with that. If you're single, it can also bring in someone new unexpectedly as well. And I would hedge my bets to say, maybe you meet them through your career, or maybe you find out that they grew up in the same homeland, home city, something like that as well if you do meet someone under that full moon. With the opposition to Uranus, it can be quite unexpected and it can be quite a different type of person than you're used to with that full moon. We also have a lot of activity happening in your 12th house. So 12th house energy, very behind the scenes, and that's okay. So while there's all this focus on you, Taurus, your ruler Venus is going to be in your 12th house all month. And when your first house ruler is going through the 12th, you can sometimes feel a little bit like, I don't want to be seen. You can feel like you want to be private, you want to retreat, you want to recharge, you want to do some healing, or you can just also sometimes find, truthfully, the 12th house brings involuntary isolation where you maybe feel a bit sick or under the weather, so you have to isolate at home. And the universe basically wants to put you in downtime, or so it feels, or you feel like you want to do that. So this can be a month for healing with you, especially because Neptune's going through your 12th house now. You could find yourself maybe having more vivid dreams, more psychic dreams. You could find with Neptune going through the 12th that you're really working with your inner world quite intuitively. You know, I think you could really find yourself reading your tarot cards more, going to a therapist more, working through some stuff that you're holding within or that has been inside you for quite a long time. The 12th house is where we start to work through things that we've buried ourselves, and sometimes we bury them so well that we have trouble finding them, but the 12th house is where we go looking for them in order to heal and release stuff from the past that might be holding us back behind the scenes. You know, the 12th house is what we can't see, but it's certainly what we can feel, and the more in touch you are with your intuition, the more you feel it. And when your first house ruler is in the 12th, you can really feel like you're getting some very interesting insights into who you are, especially when it comes to, you know, how you feel about yourself. And with Neptune there, it can really help awaken your psychic senses. It can also be a time though where you do have to watch out for hidden enemies, and that can be vices of your own. You know, that can be substances, it can be addictions, it can be a vice that you have, or it can be maybe people in your camp with Neptune that maybe aren't so much in your corner as you think. And I hate saying that because I don't want to put that, you know, out there as something that you have to worry about, because it's not necessarily. It depends where you are in life, and it depends in your 12th house. But the thing is, with the hidden enemies transit, sometimes it's more likely, I find, where you're deluding yourself more than anything else. And I don't mean you personally, but I mean as a transit, it's more likely where you're choosing to overlook something rather than someone, you know, deliberately operating behind the scenes. But they can with Neptune going through the 12th house, and you just need to be aware of that. Saturn is also entering your 12th house in the 24th, and this is a very new energy to navigate. Saturn going through Aries for you, Taurus, is really going to be wanting you to commit to healing. And I know there's a lot of talk about healing, but the 12th house does bring that energy. In this month we have Venus, we have Neptune, we have Saturn entering that sign, we have Chiron there as already, so there is a lot of focus on healing. Saturn going through the 12th house can also be a time, especially with Venus there, where you maybe connect to a soulmate. So someone that you feel you knew in a past life, someone who's come into your life to help you heal, someone who's come into your life to help you rebuild yourself, especially if you've been hurt before. That can be a manifestation of Saturn going through the 12th as well. But it does tend to come about whenever you have to face some stuff from the past that maybe you've not had time, had energy, had the resources to face. Saturn comes along and sort of clears out the 12th house. It can also be where you have important lessons on letting go, what you need to let go of in order to move forward. And that can be spiritually, that can be emotionally, or that can be literally. It just depends, Taurus. Now, we also have some second house energy coming in for you this month. The sun enters your second house on the 20th. This brings your focus to your finances. This brings your focus to your possessions, the things that you own. Mercury enters that sector on the 25th, and we have a new moon there on the 26th. For a lot of you, this could be a new way of making money is coming to you, Taurus, absolutely. That new moon's ruled by Mercury. Mercury's in Gemini, very happy in your second house. Jupiter is also still in your second house at the time of this new moon. A lot of you could have a new way of making money that actually helps you make a lot more, or helps you improve your financial situation or helps your knowledge about your financial situation. With Jupiter, Jupiter can be a mentor, someone helping you with your finances. It can also be maybe helping you with your confidence and your self-worth and your self-value. Your self-worth and confidence can very much improve in the second half of the month, Taurus, with that new moon in Gemini. So there could be a new job on the horizon for you. It could be for some of you, you're going back to a job with Pluto retrograde in your 10th from the 4th. But there can be a new way of making money, or a new way of being that is more rooted in confidence and self-approval, Taurus. But that new moon is quite a nice one. So if you are looking for a new way of making money, Gemini is about ideas. This could be an idea, this could be a phone call, a message, a recommendation, or something of that nature that comes in for you. And there could be important news around the 30th when the Sun and Mercury do conjunct in your second house, Taurus. Mars is going to be going through your family sector, your home sector all month. So this can heat up tensions. It can bring hostility or anger into the home sometimes. It can make you feel a bit highly charged. But Mars in Leo is actually connecting quite nicely to your 12th house transit. So you might find that you're able to forgive, you're able to heal, you're able to release some pent up emotions. When it comes to family tensions or a living situation tension, maybe roommates, for example, you may actually find that you're able to let things go, or you're able to forgive, or they're able to forgive. And that can be something that happens. Or it can be maybe some of you are very focused on a renovation project. You're focused on moving. You're focused on relocating with Mars going through the 4th. And as Mars clears its opposition to Pluto in the 10th, you're going to feel a lot better about these things. You won't feel as oppressed. You won't feel as bullied. You won't feel as much of a power struggle maybe with someone else or with your work, for you putting the focus onto improving your living situation, working through some family tensions or something of that nature, Taurus. But that is what I have for you. I hope you have a great month, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Gemini, welcome to your May 2025 horoscope. Hope you're doing really well. Gemini, your season is loading in May. From the 20th, the Sun will be in your sign, and your ruler Mercury enters your sign on the 25th, and we have a really lovely new moon in your sign conjunct your ruler on the 26th. So a lot of positive activity coming to you in terms of a rebrand. This can be, especially in the second half of the month, more so in the second half of the month. This is a month to really focus on yourself, your personal goals, how you want to look, how you want to style yourself. And I don't mean that in a shallow way, but how you present yourself does have an impact on the way that you feel about yourself, on your experience. So that might be something you're focusing on, how you want to show up to the world. You might be wanting to get some new clothes, new accessories. For Gemini, Gemini is the hands, so like rings or gloves or those things, bracelets, bangles, that kind of thing might be of interest to you this month. But really focusing on your image, maybe getting your nails done or something like that as well for some of you. But focus on your image, being aware of how important first impressions are. And you're likely in the second half, I think, with your ruler there to make a pretty good one. You might also have something important that you want to say, or an important idea when it comes to you on the 30th with the Sun Mercury conjunction in your sign. That's a great day for affirmations for yourself, affirming who you are, affirming who you want to be, and really helping yourself rebrand, or really, I guess, how you want to show up to the world is going to be your focus in the second half of the month. And it's quite an exciting rebranding for you, I think, Gemini. Especially with Jupiter still being in there. Jupiter's going to leave your sign in June, so please make the most of it in May, especially with that new moon and leading into June. You have a lot of opportunity to expand, to attract luck, to attract abundance, to really feel as though you are still the main character of your life, to feel like you're attracting opportunities, to feel more optimistic, to feel more hopeful, maybe to travel a little bit more or something of that nature. Make the most of it with Jupiter in your sign. And if you don't know what that can be like, Jupiter is a great manifesting planet, so maybe, try your luck at something, or just, visualize what you want, who you want to be, and embrace it. Embrace the law of attraction when Jupiter's going through your sign for sure, because it oftentimes brings you opportunities to be seen, be visible, and attract luck, Gemini. So that being said, until the 20th, we do have the sun going through your 12th house. Now, the 12th house is quite different to the first. It is behind the scenes. It's where you go to heal, to rest, to recharge. It's full of the intangible things that you can feel but you can't necessarily see so obviously. But it can be how, it can be what's working within you behind the scenes and how that's affecting you. The 12th house season comes before the first because it's where we're clearing out the past. We're clearing out old energies, stale energies, stuck energies to embrace a new beginning, a new chapter. It's sort of clear the decks before you set sail kind of thing. So the sun going through that sector, you could feel a bit more sleepy in the first half of the month, a bit more tired, a bit more, you don't necessarily want to be seen, you don't necessarily want to be the life and soul, especially with Mercury, your ruler, going from this sector in the 10th, going in this sector from the 10th to the 25th. When your ruler's in the 12th house, that's when you're really feeling behind the scenes. That's when you're really feeling like, oh, I just want to rest, I just want to recharge, I just want to take a moment, I just want to take some time to myself. You might be clearing out some stuff that you own. You might be clearing out some mental clutter, thoughts that are blocking you and getting in your own way. You might feel a little bit more interested as well in healing or therapy or ways to release pent-up emotions and discover patterns. Gemini. Now, Pluto is going to be going retrograde in your 9th house from the 4th. So this is where you might be starting to reevaluate travel plans, your affairs in foreign locations. If you're working with different countries, if your job is taking you to different locations, you could be reevaluating those types of arrangements with Pluto retrograde in your 9th house. You could also be really reevaluating your belief system, Gemini, what you believe in, what your spiritual beliefs are. Some of you could be rethinking your approach, especially your habits to your higher education, so studying, university, college. You could be rethinking these areas as well. Especially with Pluto, it's if you're, you really want to go back to school, but you're scared. Or you really want to learn about, you really want to be more spiritually active, maybe in a church or with a belief system, but you're scared of being manipulated. These types of fears can come up with Pluto retrograde in the 9th, and you might be reevaluating those. So, other things that are happening for you this month, aside from the fact that we do have a lot happening behind the scenes, Gemini, there still is a lot of opportunity for socialization. It doesn't mean you have to go to every event, but you might notice with Venus in your 11th house all month, you might have more social invitations. You might have friends you want to catch up with, friends you want to get together with. You might have a lot of opportunities for social networking. And if you do, you're going to be the belle of the ball. When Venus goes through the 11th, it's a great time to make friends, to impress people socially, to meet positive connections that can help you. Neptune has been in that sector for you since the end of March. And so you could find yourself socializing or networking or, connecting with people who are a bit more Neptunian, a bit more spiritual maybe in nature, a bit more ethereal, mystical, magical, a little bit more sensitive, empathic. But it can also be that you're maybe socializing with people who are escapists or maybe a magician. You could have, you could find yourself socializing with people who are maybe not such a good influence, and you have to really be discerning with that Neptunian energy, because every planet can go in different directions. A lot of it is how we are working with the energy as well, or how we choose to engage with it. Now, Saturn is going to make that sector so much more serious on the 24th. Saturn enters your friendship sector. And where Saturn goes, it brings a sense of seriousness, somberness, responsibility, and commitment. One thing I will say with Saturn going through the 11th, the best way to have friends is to be a friend. When Saturn goes into the 11th house, sometimes people can automatically find themselves thinking, do I have any friends? Who are my friends? Are these people really my friends? There's this sort of sense of, okay, I need to really think seriously about my friendships. And Saturn going into that sector can have you maybe, connecting friendship wise with people who are a bit older or people who are Saturnian, they could be Capricorns, Aquarius. It can also be where you're maybe looking at certain friendships and thinking, are these friendships healthy for me? Especially with Neptune there, are they good for me? Are they keeping me accountable? Are they honest? And Saturn can be a bit of a wake-up call in that area sometimes. It can also be if you're not, committing or putting in the work with your friendships. It can be where you start to realize that you need to do so. So Saturn going through that sector is going to make you take those more seriously. It's also going to make you take your goals and ambitions more seriously, your wishes. So Saturn going through the sector can say, what are your dreams and how are you working towards them or not, Gemini? So we do as well have a full moon in your 6th house on the 12th. And this is highlighting your work. This is highlighting your day job, your routines. This is highlighting your health. So I think with this one, Gemini, you might find under this full moon that you're reaching some sort of goal health-wise. You might find that you're really more interested in hitting the gym, eating clean, eating well, focusing on taking care of your health. It can also be a time of job change for you, Gemini. This full moon could be a time where there's something happening in your work environment. There could be some disruptions that you didn't see coming with Sun and Uranus connecting in your 12th house, surprises from people behind the scenes. This can be a time with the full moon in your 6th house where co-workers leave. There's changes in your role, there's changes in your the services that you provide, changes in your ordinary environment. A bit of disruption there, I think, with Uranus. But it can also be a good time to clear out in your workspace, to clear out any fears, any phobias, and that you have mentally. But it can also be a good time to clear out your work drawer or clear out your desk or something like that. With Scorpio, you might find something that you thought you lost. This full moon in Scorpio, as I say, it's opposite Uranus, so there's a bit of expect the unexpected with it. But it's a great time to do some transformation, especially when it comes to your job or your fitness or your wellness, Gemini. But that is what I have for you. I hope you have a great month, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Cancer, welcome to your May 2025 horoscope. So Cancer, this month we have a full moon in Scorpio for you, which is your 5th house. Now it's going to be opposite the Sun and Uranus in your 11th house. So this full moon happening in your 5th house, Cancer, can bring up themes of romance. It can bring up themes of love, dating. It can bring up matters with your children if you have them. And it can also bring up your creativity and your hobbies and what you do for fun, basically. So this full moon is saying to you that these themes are taking center stage. They're taking the spotlight. So for you, Cancer, this could be a full moon where you're falling in love. This could be a full moon where feelings are being shared romantically. It could be surprising to you that this comes with a friend or someone in your friendship group or your social network. Maybe someone in your friendship group declares feelings. Maybe you realize you have feelings for a friend. Maybe you meet someone online unexpectedly, because there is an unexpected element coming from your 11th house. That could really surprise you romantically. So for some of you, that could be what's happening with this woman. A friend might unexpectedly set you up with someone as well, if you're single. If you have children, this full moon can be where something is coming up with them that surprises you, but it could be a surprise in terms of maybe the friendships that they have, the social groups they're running in, the social circles they're running in as well. There could be a bit of unexpected energy coming up there. This can also be a time where a creative project with a group of people takes an unexpected turn. But it helps you see where things are. None of these unexpected energies have to be negative, but it can certainly be with oppositions from Uranus. It can certainly be where someone else is bringing an element of surprise to your life. So whether that be, a romantic partner, whether that be a friend, whether that be a child, whether that be someone you're working with creatively, there could be unexpected developments happening around that full moon from somebody in your life. But you might also have an unexpected change of heart or an unexpected change in what makes you happy. A realization in what makes you happy. The actual Sun-Uranus conjunction happening in your 11th house happens on the 17th. And this can be surprise when it comes to friends. It could be for some of you that someone's throwing you a surprise party. If you're a Taurus Sun, for example, or a Gemini Sun, there could be a surprise party in the works for some of you. Cancer risings. But I think with this Uranus Sun opposition in your 11th house, there can be changes with your friendships. There can be changes in a team that you didn't see coming. There can be changes for you in terms of your goals. Sun Uranus helps us operate at a higher vibration. Sometimes it can bring shocks and surprises, but that's maybe where we are too resistant and we're holding ourselves down. So you might be inspired by a change that comes up with a friend or with a team member or something of that nature to make your own changes, Cancer. Now let's talk about your career, because Venus is going to be in your career sector all month. So as a Cancer rising, Venus going through your career sector is really quite positive. But there are changes afoot when it comes to your social standing, your public image, your public persona, your boss, your career more generally. Venus going through this sector, very positive, because it means that you can attract opportunities career-wise. It also means that you're usually in favour with the boss, you're usually in favour with your job, you're respected, you're seen well. It can also be where people are really appreciating what you wear to work, how you show up. You could look better in your work clothes, you could really be treating the office like a catwalk kind of thing with Venus going through the 10th house, especially because Neptune is there. More Cancer risings may get interested in fashion or the arts as career perspectives, with Neptune now being in that sector. Neptune is in your 10th house all month, so a lot of you may be looking towards more careers with a bit more of a spiritual connection, careers where you feel a little bit more altruistic, like you're doing something meaningful. You need meaning attached to your career going forward, Cancer. But Saturn is entering that sector on the 24th, and Saturn going through the 10th house is a time where it brings a lot of responsibility, a lot of maturity. Saturn transits show us where we are growing up. So Saturn going through the 10th house, it often coincides with times in our lives where maybe we're starting our first job after university, after college, a graduate job. It can be a time where we make significant career changes. We go into a new industry, a new area. For you, Cancer, because Saturn rules your partnership, your marriage, you might be wanting to work or start a business with a spouse or a partner. Can be a business partner as well. But with Saturn in this sector, you take your work very seriously, and I think with Neptune there, you're looking for meaning. So a lot of you really could be going in a new direction work-wise. Saturn going through the 10th, it can bring some bumps in the road though. It can bring some rude awakenings where we haven't done the work or where we haven't committed to our job. It can bring trouble with people in positions of authority if we're not taking accountability or responsibility. It can bring karmic bosses where we learn a lot from, whether that be for better or worse. It really depends where you're at in your life. Usually if you're over 30, Saturn transits, you kind of get the message more. But it can also be where you're really transitioning into a more serious or a career where you feel like you can commit. You want to be there. You want to put the work in with Saturn going through the 10th house. Now this is just a short spell because Saturn won't officially do its full stint in Aries until 2026 because Saturn will retrograde back into your 9th. But this is going to set the stage for some events this month when it comes to the direction that you're going in career-wise. You now have two outer planets in your career sector, Neptune and Saturn, and the outer planets do tend to bring a lot of change and opportunities, and they really set, especially in an angular house, they really set new directions for you, Cancer. So I would say pay attention to May when it comes to your career, what conversations you're having, what thoughts you're having, what's coming up, because it can give you a clue to the direction you're going in more long term. So the sun is going through your friendship sector until the 20th. As I said, this is a very social time for you. You might have more opportunities to socialize because of your job, because of your work. But this is a really good time to meet up with your friends, to talk with your friends, to see your friends, to be social, to network, to get out there, Cancer. When the sun enters Gemini on the 20th, you might not feel so social because this is behind the scenes for you. This is where you maybe are wanting more time to yourself, maybe some more downtime, more sleep, more rest. Especially whenever Mercury enters the sector on the 25th and we have a new moon in your 12th house on the 26th. So that new moon for you, Cancer, is about working on something behind the scenes. You could be having a lot of private discussions. You could be talking in secret. You could be maybe deciding that you want to heal something as well with the 12th house. So maybe talking to a therapist, talk therapy could be coming up for you with a new moon in Gemini. It could be a time where you are starting a new conversation with someone, but it feels private. It does feel behind the scenes, or it feels sort of spiritual in nature for some of you. So maybe it's kind of telepathic, maybe you notice you have a telepathic communication with somebody this month as well, Cancer. But it's really putting you behind the scenes whenever the sun enters your 12th house. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. The 12th house, the isolation part, it's not always involuntary. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's where you feel a bit under the weather. Sometimes it's where you feel a little bit tired, Cancer. So maybe you're needing more rest, maybe you're needing more sleep, maybe you're recovering from something. But it can also be where you do just enjoy being alone or at home, not necessarily lonely, but you're really focused on how you're healing, just resting, recharging can be a big theme in the second half of the month for you, Cancer. Pluto is going retrograde in your 8th house on the 4th. Now, this is an interesting one for you because you could really be looking again at a fear, at a pattern, but it feels like a fear. Pluto going through the 8th house can be a time of facing one's fears. What's holding you back? What's stopping you? There's going to be a time when you're doing some intensive therapy. There's going to be a time when you're really working through past traumas. There's going to be a time when you're looking again at a particular fear you have, or what's blocking you, or what's stopping you. You could be looking again maybe also at your financial arrangements. You could be looking again at your mortgage, at your loans, especially when it comes to children, because Pluto does rule in modern astrology. Pluto rules your 5th house of children. So you could be looking at your financial arrangements with your children. You could be looking at your intimate relationships and how you're connecting with someone significant in your life romantically. Really reevaluating this and looking a little bit deeper at patterning, looking a little bit deeper at your fears as well, Cancer. Could be something that interests you. And a lot of you with Pluto retrograde in the 8th, you could get very interested in mysteries and conspiracies and the taboo. You could find yourself very interested in these topics. You could find them to be something that you're maybe, you're playing the investigator with Pluto retrograde in the 8th as well. But some of that investigation does seem to be inward. So that's what I have for you, Cancer. I hope you have a wonderful month, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Leo, welcome to your May 2025 horoscope. Hope you're doing really well. So Leo, Mars is in your sign all month and in direct motion. So this is a month where you may find that you are feeling more assertive. You could feel more dynamic. You might have more energy for your personal goals, your personal ambitions, for taking care of your body, for working out. You could notice you have a bit of excess energy at times that can manifest as irritation or volatility if you don't channel it well. So I would suggest for those of you that are into fitness, maybe channeling it into your sport or your fitness, or for those of you that are creative, channeling it into your creative passions, really using the excess energy to your advantage rather than let it irritate you, because Mars energy can sometimes bring a sense of irritation with it. But you might also find that you're a bit more assertive when it comes to other people challenging you, not forgetting that Pluto is in your opposite sign. Now, Pluto is, of course, going retrograde in May, on May 4th, May the 4th be with you. But Pluto is going retrograde in your sector of relationships. So essentially, you're reevaluating relationships in your life. Now, Pluto is, in terms of how it is affecting your partnerships, Pluto is bringing a sense of transformation. So you may be reflecting on how you could change your relationship. You might be reflecting on changing the patterns you have in relationships. If you notice patterns creeping up, or you start to become aware with Pluto retrograde of a pattern that is repeating in your relationship life or with a key relationship, you might start to acknowledge it and look at ways to transform it. Pluto can also be where, going through the 7th house, where you address your fears over partnerships, or your fear of not being in a partnership. So maybe you fear of being committed, maybe you fear of being alone. Whatever your fear is when it comes to close one-on-one relationships, you might be doing a little bit of digging or an investigation with Pluto retrograde here. Or it can be, if you're in a happy, settled relationship, Pluto retrograde here can help bring up You know, it can help you heal maybe some fears you have of what could happen in the relationships, you know, anxieties and that type of thing. If you have them, Pluto retrograde can help you maybe source where they come from, source the beginning point, the root of any patterns of fear or obsessive behaviors or something of that nature. You know, say your partner goes out and you have to text them every 5 minutes because you're worried something's going to happen. You know, Pluto can be that kind of energy. So you might notice with Pluto retrograde, if you have any fears, any phobias, any patterns you want to address. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that it's those specific things. I just give examples as a way of, you know, how transits can play out. They can play out in so many different ways. I can't give every single example, but just the themes, you know. Reflecting on the changes you want to make with your relationships, with your relationship patterns, or where you have any fears, phobias, when it comes to partnerships and relationships as well, Leo. And Pluto going through the 7th house, it can also be, you know, nothing to do with romantic relationships. You could just be finding with Mars having been going through your sign. Obviously, we had that Mars-Pluto opposition on the 26th of April, 27th of April, depending on where you were. And we feel the energy of that a little bit at the beginning of May, not so much. The separation is moving it further and further away with Mars direct. But this can be a time when you're really noticing how other people are challenging you to assert yourself, or challenging you to stick up for yourself, or challenging you to stand up for yourself, Leo, as well. So, aside from Mars, the Sun, your ruler, is going to be in your 10th house until the 20th. So the 10th house is about your public image, it's about your career. So a lot of you could be really focused on your work this month. A lot of you, if you have a public image or a public profile, you could be very focused on showing up, being seen. And this could be a time as well for some of you, maybe with that new moon in Taurus at the end of April, you're starting a new job, you're starting a new career path, you're starting a new chapter professionally. Some of you with the Sun going through your 10th house, you could have stuff that you really want to put online, you know, announcements, things you want to make public, things you want to say, especially around the 10th or the 24th. The 10th, Mercury enters your 10th house, so you might be putting something up on social media, something to declare, something to say. And the 24th, Mercury and Uranus meet in your 10th house, so surprise news you might want to put up, or perhaps surprise information about a boss, about your career, about your job could come up at that time. But essentially for a lot of you, Leo, this month puts you in the spotlight. You know, you're at the front of a lot of people's minds. You might be more active online. You might have more activity happening in your job. You might have a promotion that you're putting up there, something that you're just more front and center, you know, you're more seen, you're more visible. So if you want to be more seen and more visible, do make the most of it this month, especially with Mars in your sign. You know, you can be very driven to your personal goals, and you can feel more comfortable with attention from other people as well, with Mars going through that sector. Mars going through that sector as well, if you're single, is very good for your dating life as well. It can bring, you know, you can be very appreciated by other people in terms of your, with Mars, hotness. You know, other people can find you very hot and very attractive when Mars is going through your sign. So if you are looking for love, that's something to bear in mind. Or if you're, you know, wanting to be seen, just bear in mind you're coming up as more Mars, so hotter, more direct, more assertive, that kind of thing. But yes, there could be a lot happening for you publicly this month. There are a lot happening for you career, very focused on your career. You're more likely to be seen by people in positions of authority. And the Sun and Uranus meet in the 17th, so that's the annual conjunction in your 10th house. So that can be a time where maybe something surprising happens at work, something unexpected with a boss, something unexpected with your career. But the Sun and Uranus, when they meet, it can bring this opportunity to raise your frequency, to raise your vibration. So for a lot of you, you might be thinking, okay, I want to do what's right for me career-wise. Who cares what people think? Because Uranus is there. And Leo risings especially, I've noticed since Uranus entered Taurus in 2018, so many, nearly all the Leo risings I know have become self-employed, have started going on a more alternative path career-wise, or if it's not that, they simply want more freedom. You know, their freedom is their biggest motivator in their career, freedom and space to be themselves, to do what they want, to show up in whatever way they want to show up, whether it's considered weird, wacky, or whatever. So with that Sun-Uranus conjunction, for some of you, that can really be a leveling up where you're thinking, I have this idea, I have this vision. Other people might not get it. That's okay. and you're going into this new frequency and you're upping your game when it comes to your public image, your own goals, your career. It doesn't have to be a typical career path, you know, it's whatever you're known for publicly, essentially. So we also have a lot of opportunities this month for you, Leo, when it comes to travel, when it comes to education, when it comes to your belief systems. Venus is going through that sector. So Venus is going through your 9th house all month, and Venus is direct now. So this can be a really nice time for connecting with people in different countries, connecting with people at university. You know, you can have a better time socially while traveling, a better time socially at university, at college. This can be a better time for you socially if you go to a church or some sort of spiritual organization or religious organization. Venus tends to bring positive spiritual relationships. Or positive relationships wherever it's transiting, and positive connections, and you can really benefit from these types of places. Now, Neptune is of course in that sector. Neptune's there all month, but that's bringing a more spiritual element to your 9th house as well, Leo. It can certainly be a time where you, with Neptune, become very spiritual, you know, very devout in something that you believe in, regardless of what type of religion or what type of belief system it is. Neptune going through the 9th can oftentimes make you more sensitive to your belief systems, a more sensitive connection to the divine even. Now, the thing about this is that Saturn is entering this sector on the 24th. Now, Saturn tends to bring responsibility. It tends to bring commitment, somberness as well, and restriction at times. You might find with this transit that you're not... Now, I have to say, Leo risings, more than anybody I know, love traveling, especially if they can get somewhere sunny for the most part. You know, if you're the exception to the norm, do let me know. But I find that Leo placements tend to love traveling somewhere where there's sun if they don't live there already. Saturn going through the 9th can sometimes be a time where you travel a little bit less. It doesn't have to be, but it can be a time when you want to travel a little bit less, and maybe that's because of work, maybe that's because of health, maybe that's because of your routine not allowing it. It doesn't mean that you can't travel at all, because Saturn can actually bring very important karmic lessons and experiences in our life, and sometimes that can be where, you know, you visit a place and you feel this real strong sense of connection to it. You feel you've maybe had a past life there, you feel like it's meant to teach you something, and it sometimes does. So that can be an important one as well. It doesn't rule out traveling, but it can certainly bring you to places where you have some sort of karmic connection. But it does tend to mean that maybe you don't travel as much. It can also mean that you're very committed to studying. Saturn going through the 9th is when people get a master's degree. They get a diploma. They are committed to their university experience. I think when Saturn was going through my 9th, I got my degree and then a master's as well. Like the whole period was about study for me, but I certainly did travel in that time. Just want to mention that. It's not that it rules it out completely, but everywhere I traveled there was a sense of everywhere I traveled, because one of them was traveling with work, there was like a sense of, I've been here before, I feel like this is teaching me something. You know, I never came out of any travel experience with just a, well, that was a laugh. It was just sort of more serious. So bear that in mind with the 9th house. It can also make you more serious about your spiritual practice as well. Leo. So we do have all that activity happening in your 10th house, but we also have a lot of activity then happening in your 11th house. And this is where things get really nice and social. The sun enters your 11th house on the 20th. We have a new moon there on the 26th. A lot of you could be making a new friend this month. And this is cute because Jupiter is still in that sector for the whole month. You could find yourself making some new friends, expanding your social group. There could be a new chapter with an existing friendship, or maybe you're a little bit more closer or in communication a little bit more frequently. Some of you could also be really focusing on manifesting with the new moon in your 11th house on the 26th. That is a lovely new moon for you to speak things into existence, Leo, to make a list of everything you want in life. Or at least 2 things with Gemini, but new moons in the 11th are one of the best for setting intentions, you know, manifesting, visualizing. And with Gemini being involved, it's about speaking things into existence or writing them into existence as well. So that can be a time where you're really focused on your friendships. There can be a new one. There can be a reset in an existing relationship that you have with a friend, or there can be increased teamwork. joining a group, joining a community, focusing on something philanthropic, something perhaps charitable as well for some of you, Leo, as well. But that is what I have for you. I hope you have a wonderful month. And I will, no, it's not Leo, don't go. I forgot to mention the full moon in Scorpio for you. The full moon in Scorpio is happening on the 12th. And that is about your home and your family sector, okay? So that full moon is highlighting your home, your living arrangements, your family. You could be making some changes in the home. I think for a lot of you, there could be, unexpected changes for you when it comes to your career, or you could be making changes yourself when it comes to your career, thinking about outside the box. And especially if you have, a working from home arrangement, this full moon could highlight your working from home arrangement. Maybe you want to change your home office. Maybe you want to change your studio. Maybe for some of you, you're wanting to change your working from home relationship to your career. So maybe you're wanting to adjust your hours or something of that nature to get more balance in your home. Or maybe you have something happening in the home with your family that you want to put out publicly. Okay, that could be something that you're wanting to put out as well, but it's really putting the focus in your home. So maybe you're sprucing it up, maybe you're redecorating, renovating. Some of you could be buying a home, some of you could be purchasing a home or beginning a new rental period. But some of you could as well with a full moon be leaving a home or ending a chapter when it comes to your renovation. Or as I said, you could have something family related to put out there, Leo. But that is what I have for you. I hope you have a great month and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Virgo, welcome to May 2025. This is your horoscope for the month ahead. So Virgo, first half of the month, the sun is going to be going through your sector of travel. And Mercury enters this sector on the 10th, and of course we have Uranus there all month, and the sun and Uranus meet on the 17th. This can be a really lovely month for traveling because you might find that that's just where you want to put your energy, into taking a trip, into taking a vacation, into exploring somewhere different. For some of you, if it's not taking an actual trip, it's still the energy of adventure, being more open to the wild unknown, studying something new, learning something new, maybe looking into something spiritual or religious. The Sun-Uranus conjunction on the 17th, when we have Uranus energy, yes, absolutely, it can bring shocks and surprises, but it can bring a higher frequency with it. And so this might be a month where you sort of feel like you're elevating in terms of your worldview. You're seeing things from a higher perspective. You're feeling more spiritually connected. You're feeling more adventurous. You're feeling a little bit like changing it up. And if you are studying or you're learning something this month, Virgo, I feel like it might change your perspective in unexpected ways. And you just feel a little bit like your frequency shifting to being a little bit more hopeful or a little bit more optimistic with that Sun-Uranus energy. But with your ruler Mercury entering there on the 10th until the 25th, lovely time to travel, lovely time to explore, and lovely time to just embrace the energy of adventure, even if it is just a local adventure. You could be having a local adventure around the full moon in Scorpio on the 12th. And this can be a time where maybe you're more active in your neighborhood. There's something coming up with a neighbor, there's something coming up with a sibling, there could be something coming up with a car or a gadget as well around this time. A bit of an unexpected energy because of the opposition to Uranus in the 9th. So if you are traveling, just be mindful that there could be a little bit of a disruption around that time. There could be something unexpected in the mix around that time as well. But essentially with that full moon, it can bring up for you important conversations as well, or important news or information. You might get an email, a letter, some type of communication that is maybe a bit surprising for you, Virgo, or a little bit of a wild card, like something that maybe shakes things up a little bit, something you didn't necessarily expect or you didn't expect how it would play out. There could be, with it being in Scorpio, an element of secrecy to this. So maybe a secret conversation, or maybe, secretly investigating something on social media or doing a bit of research into something privately, Virgo, could be coming up for you with that full moon. So pay attention to that. I feel like it could be secretive for you because the traditional ruler of Scorpio was Mars. And Mars is in your 12th house all month. So you may be really focused on operating behind the scenes. And when it comes to your actions, you could be doing some stuff secretly. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, but you maybe just don't want people to see what you're doing just yet, or you maybe don't want them to have an opinion on what you're doing just yet. So there's a few things you're keeping to yourself with Mars going through the 12th house. That's oftentimes where our actions are more covert than usual. Be mindful as well of your sleep, because Mars going through the 12th house can be a time where you have insomnia. If you have some, pent up energy that you're not getting to express, it can come up in your sleep, and Mars can really aggressively make you look at your subconscious. So be mindful of that. I find that it's a sort of, an old school approach, but lavender can really help with sleeping and stuff like that, or having something that smells nice beside your bed is known to invoke more pleasant dreams. So if you need something like that, bear that in mind, because Mars going through the 12th can be kind of exhausting for you, Virgo. So bear that in mind. I do think there's an element of privacy to your actions this month. So Pluto is going retrograde on the 4th in your 6th house. So the private information and private communication could be to do with your work, or it could be to do with your health. Pluto here is really helping you reevaluate how you make changes and transformations when it comes to your health or your work. So with the retrograde energy, you're sort of reflecting on past actions when it comes to your job. Because Mars is in the 12th, sometimes this can bring a why didn't I do this or why didn't I do that type of energy. But with Pluto retrograde here, you're really thinking about what's holding you back when it comes to your job, what's holding you back when it comes to your health, and where are you afraid of making changes or transformations. You're really reevaluating that this month. And I think a lot of Virgo risings in particular are headed towards a change professionally. The reason that I say that is because we have the Sun entering your 10th house on the 20th, Mercury enters that sector on the 25th, which certainly means your energy in the second half of the month is nearly all going to your career, to your public profile, to your job, to how you're viewed by the world. That can also be where you have something to put forward to the world with Mercury there, something to declare. A lot of important conversations in your career with other people, with your boss. But the reason that I think there's a new chapter is because we have this lovely new moon in Gemini on the 26th, and it's conjunct Mercury, its ruler. Mercury is the dispositor of this new moon, and it's conjunct the new moon in Gemini. And Jupiter is, of course, also still in Gemini this month. So if you didn't feel like you got the career wins you were hoping for with Jupiter going through your 10th house this year, because obviously there were those really tough squares with Saturn in your 7th house, meaning that the relationship part of your career might not have been so great. Professional relationships might have been tricky, and professional partnerships could have been tricky at times. This new moon is a lovely new beginning for you professionally, Virgo. You could get a new job, you could have a new role, you could have a promotion, you could have a new service that you're providing within your job. There's something new happening in your career, and I feel like you get to use the best of your talents, Virgo, because Mercury is your ruler and it is in Gemini. And Mercury is very happy in Gemini. So you're getting to use your logical skills, your braininess, your communication. Maybe you know a different language. Maybe you are really an effective communicator. Maybe you're good with social media. Maybe you can explain things well. Maybe you can teach. Maybe you can take a workshop. Maybe you're teaching other people something in your career. You're taking a training that's important to your evolution career-wise. Whatever the case is, Virgo, I feel like that new moon is really a new start for you professionally. For a lot of you, it could be a new job or a reset in your career. And with Jupiter still there, the luck and the abundance can still come in, especially in Gemini season. So as I say, if you really felt like the Jupiter and Gemini transit with the square to Saturn was not it, this can be a really positive time for you professionally, Virgo, to move forward and expand. And there could be an important conversation or communication around the 30th when it comes to your career, when it comes to your work. Maybe you get a letter, an email, a phone call, maybe you post something and it goes viral. Whatever the case is, there can be a lot of positive energy coming in for you professionally. Now, I need to talk about your 8th house. And I just want to preface this by saying the 8th house is notoriously hard to discuss on YouTube, because when you have to evaluate your own video when you're editing it, it asks you if you talk about any of these different topics, and they're all in the 8th house. So I'm going to have to cover this in a way that makes sense, but is not going to get me an issue. So on YouTube. So Venus is going through your 8th house all month. That can be really positive for benefiting through others financially. So getting approved for a loan, getting approved for a mortgage, your partner making more money, your business partner pulling in more money. Venus going through that sector, very positive as well for intimate relationships, connecting with others more intimately. And especially if you want to have vulnerable conversations, when Mercury is in the 8th house until the 10th and Venus is conjunct Neptune on the 2nd, in and around the first 10 days of May, you may find that you can have more vulnerable, open communications, maybe with romantic partners or even with business partners, or, you know, it's easier for you to attract assets from other people. Now, Mercury is going through the 8th house, so a lot of you could have this, you know, approach to, well, Neptune's a very healing energy as it is, but it can also be deceptive, it can also be diluted, but it can be a very high frequency for healing. And the 8th house is a very raw part of our chart. Now that Saturn is entering there, Saturn can really help you get serious about facing your fears. So how can that be? And bear in mind, Saturn's going to retrograde back into your 7th house later on, and then Saturn finally settles into Aries in 2026. Some of you might have to face some fears surrounding intimacy in relationships. So that can be where you realize you're avoidant in your attachment style, you're anxious in your attachment style. That can be where you realize that you need to do some work and some healing, likely through therapy or shadow work with the 8th house, when it comes to having close, intimate connections with other people. However, it doesn't have to be about relationships. This can be where you realize you have an obsession, a compulsion that you need to work through. And with the 8th house, Saturn can be very testing. This can be where you say, okay, I'm recognizing a pattern. I'm actually going to have to work on this. I can't avoid this. I can't run away from this, or else the consequences will be dire. I don't mean to laugh because I don't think that's funny, but it just popped into my head. There was a TV show called Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and she wasn't studying enough for the family secret. And this guy kept appearing with this flashing light above his head in an orange coat, and he says, warning, warning, the consequences will be dire. So it just triggered a memory in my head. But yes, it can be a case where you really do focus on doing the work, and you really do focus on facing your fears, recognizing your attachments, your attachment style in relationships. It can also be a time when you get very serious about your finances. You know, Saturn is commitment, adulting. You get a loan, you get a mortgage, you clear out debt, you become more mindful of your investments, of your spending with Saturn there. And you might also notice if you have any control issues with Saturn going through the 8th house as well. So you might start organizing your finances. You might start seeing a therapist for relationship issues. And you might face some fears. And this can really help you go from surviving to thriving, Virgo. So I know that it doesn't sound fun, but Saturn transits are often genuinely, they're often the most rewarding. You know, just because they're not fun and exciting in a lot of cases, they can be the most rewarding. I will also say, and the 8th house, it's about mortality, and you can find yourself more focused on your own mortality. And I'm not saying anything's going to happen, although I will say Saturn transit the 8th, I've noticed that a lot of the time it can be where because Saturn is much older people, it can sometimes be the loss of a grandparent, but you would know if that was something that was happening with Saturn entering the 8th house. It doesn't have to be that, by the way, but it can also be where you're more focused on your mortality and you think, okay, if I have property, if I have this, that, or whatever, I'm going to make a will, or I'm going to look into this, you know, sort of getting your financial affairs in order, even if it's something that's not comfortable to talk about. That can be something that comes up for you with Saturn going through the 8th house as well. And it can be as well where you do come into some kind of inheritance as well, or your partner comes into an inheritance, or, you know, with Saturn again from a much older person. But not always. Not always. It's more to do about facing your fears, to be perfectly honest, and doing the work there. With Saturn ruling your 5th house, it can be fears from childhood, or something of that nature as well, Virgo. So I just wanted to mention that for you. And you can really face any addictions, because Pluto retrograde in the 6th, if you have anything that's holding you back health wise or anything that's unhealthy, it feels like this summer a lot of Virgo risings might be really thinking, I'm going to face my fears this summer, I'm going to do what scares me, I'm going to go after the type of change that's not easy but is worth it, so that can be something that you're figuring out or starting to notice. You're leaning into the energy of change is uncomfortable, change is scary, but I'm okay with being scared, is sort of, I think, what a lot of Virgo risings are leaning into in May. So that is what I have for you, Virgo, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Libra, welcome to your May horoscope. Libra, your ruling planet Venus is direct this month, thankfully, but Venus will be for the whole month in your sector of relationships and partnerships. So because Venus is your ruling planet, it's going to be bringing your focus and your attention to your connections, to your relationships, whether they be your spouse, your marriage, your significant other, whether they be business partnerships, or whether it be finding new relationships. This can be a very important month for you when it comes to these, especially because on May 2nd, Venus is meeting up with Neptune for the first time in your 7th house in your lifetime, because Neptune is that slow moving a planet, and Neptune just entered your relationship sector at the very end of March. So this connection is important. This means that for a lot of you, especially if you have a Libra ascendant at say 0, 1, 2 degrees, this might be a very important time in your love life where you could meet a soulmate, or you could perhaps have a spiritual experience with a partnership or a relationship. The thing about Neptune being involved here is that it tends to bring about, it can bring about big time soulmates that feel like a dream come true. There can be a very rose tinted approach to these soulmates. They can be spiritual people, they can be dreamy people. Sometimes with Neptune though, there can be a bit of a fog over your judgment at times, whereby you're maybe not seeing the person for who they truly are. It really depends how you work with the energy, and different people will have different experiences. But with Neptune, use your discernment. One of the reasons you may have better discernment this month in terms of your partnerships and relationships, and you may even get a bit of a reality check, is because Saturn is entering your relationship sector on the 24th. So as you can see, Libra, there's a big focus on your partnerships this month. And with Saturn being in your relationship sector from the 24th, Saturn will retrograde back into Pisces, and then it won't fully settle into Aries until early next year. But you'll be feeling this energy in May. This is going to be a time where you may find it is make or break for a partnership, a relationship. And this can be where, if a relationship is no longer working, if it needs to end, Saturn can be a bit of a course corrector, so it can change your relationship status. But this can also be a time where you commit to a relationship, you make it a long-term thing. If you're single, this can be where you meet a partner, maybe who's a bit older than you with Saturn sometimes, not always. They can just look older. It can be when you connect with a partnership or make a connection to someone that could be your future spouse or your future long-term partner. It can also be a time where you have business connections that come in that could be there for a very long time too, with Saturn entering this sector. But Saturn does tend to course correct. So if you're, maybe you've been alone for too long, Saturn's coming in and saying, hey, it's time to meet somebody. Or if it's that you've been, trying to get a relationship to do what you were hoping for a long time to no avail, this transit might say it's time to course correct and go elsewhere. It can be that type of energy too, but it does really help with Aries energy to focus on your identity within relationships and make sure that you're not losing yourself in another person as well. So as you can see, this month there's a big focus in relationships. With Venus there, you could absolutely meet someone new if you're looking, and it can also be a time where you maybe are making more formal commitments in your partnerships and your relationships as well. We do have a full moon in your 2nd house this month on the 12th, so this can bring up your financial situation. This could be a full moon that perhaps your financial situation is highlighted for whatever reason. You're getting paid under this full moon, you're checking your bank balance, you're having a change in your salary. It can be something of that nature happening for you around this time, Libra. It can also help you get to grips in your finances and see if there's anything that you need to change with Uranus being so close to the sun under this full moon. Uranus is going to meet the Sun on the 17th, you might find that you're getting some clarity when it comes to the money that you receive from other people. This can be your spouse, your partner, this can be the government, this can be a bank, this can be a mortgage, a loan. There could be some surprises in store there with Uranus connecting with the Sun. But as I keep saying to everybody, you know, Uranus-Sun conjunctions, they happen annually and they tend to represent where we get an opportunity to elevate our frequency. So, you know, you might get a higher perspective on a financial matter with this full moon. But it may be that, you know, there's something that is coming up with your partner's money, the bank, the mortgage, that's giving you a bit of financial clarity on where you stand with this full moon. It can also be, you know, with the Sun going through your 8th house until the 20th and Mercury going through your 8th house from the 10th until the 25th. This can be a time when you're really doing some shadow work, Libra. You know, you might be, well, with the 8th house, yes, your partner's money, your joint financial situations can be very much highlighted this month. It can also be from a psychological standpoint that you're shining a light on your shadow. You're maybe figuring out some things that need to be addressed. Maybe you're working through something with a therapist. It's easier to talk about those matters. It's easier to talk about the difficult things from the 10th to the 25th. Pluto is going to go retrograde in your 5th house on the 4th, and this can be bringing up fears surrounding children, fears surrounding love, fears surrounding your creativity. Pluto retrograde asks us to reflect and revisit fears, phobias we have, or where we're simply afraid of change. And maybe for some of you, you're noticing that, you know, say you have children that are flying the nest, you're finding it quite difficult or quite challenging. Or maybe you're finding that you're reflecting on your own childhood and it's giving you some insights as to the way you spend your money or as to the way you relate to your financial situation. And what I mean by that is that with the full moon in Scorpio, it's ruled by Pluto in Aquarius. And you may find with Pluto going retrograde that you're sort of reflecting on, okay, well, maybe my spending matches this that happened, or maybe I spend when I'm feeling this way. It can also be that maybe you're reflecting on the money that you spend on your children, their allowances or something of that nature. But with Pluto retrograde in Aquarius for you, I think essentially a lot of you could also be picking up old creative projects or old hobbies that used to bring you a lot of fun, and you could be finding them kind of transformative. You know, Pluto retrograde in the 5th is like art therapy, where you're finding music healing, where you're finding painting healing, where you're finding you're doing inner child work, that kind of thing with Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. And that full moon in Scorpio in the 12th is going to highlight it quite significantly. It is also co-ruled by Mars in Leo, which for you, Libra, is to do with your friendships. So you might be finding with Mars in Leo that you have more energy for social causes, for activism. You might have more energy for friendships, teams, groups, but there can also be, I guess, a bit of tension in this area too with Mars. Things can get a bit heated sometimes. There can be disagreements. There can be a bit of volatility at times in groups. So do watch for that. The Sun is going to be entering your 9th house on the 20th, and this is really cute because Jupiter is still there, and this is when I think people are going to start to notice the gifts that Jupiter leaves behind, especially in June. But with the Sun entering that sector on the 20th and the new moon there on the 26th, conjunct Mercury in that sector as well, a lot of people are going to find this new moon to be one that is quite lively. For you, this could be when you're taking a trip, you're taking a travel experience, you're going on holiday, you're going on vacation, you're going abroad, or you're planning a trip. For some of you, this could be that you're taking a course, you're getting an education, this is a new chapter in your studies, this is something that you're really interested in, that really piques your curiosity. You could be beginning a new course of study, Libra, with this new moon in Gemini. That is what I have for you, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Hi Scorpio, welcome to your May horoscope. Hope you're doing really well. So Scorpio, we have some significant energy coming up this month for you personally. Your modern ruling planet Pluto is going retrograde on the 4th, and we have a full moon in your sign on the 12th. So the full moon in your 1st house is going to highlight you. It's natural to feel a bit more sensitive under this full moon. It's natural to feel a little bit more emotional, and it's also very natural to feel a little bit more self-conscious. because it's going to put you in the spotlight. Now, it very much puts you in the spotlight because it is ruled by your traditional ruling planet Mars in your 10th house of public image, of career, but it is also co-ruled by your modern ruler Pluto retrograde in your 4th house of your private life, your home and your family. So it's really highlighting the roles and identities that you have, Scorpio, in different places, you know, who you are at home, who you are to your family, how you feel about your living situation in your environment. You may be facing some memories from the past. You may be looking back at your childhood, at your upbringing, and you might be encountering some awareness from a psychological standpoint of why you are the way you are, who you are, the role that you play. And Pluto is really reflecting on your different hats that you wear in different places. Mars being in the 10th house, you're reflecting on how you show up at work, who you are at work, what your identity is, the person that you are at work, the person that you are publicly. And you could very much find yourself in the spotlight at this time, Scorpio, with this full moon. It is opposed by Uranus in your 7th house of relationships. Uranus brings an element of surprise to your relationship, sometimes shock, sometimes disruption, but also sometimes a higher frequency. A lot of you are maybe looking for more space in your relationships, the freedom to be yourself, or you have a partner that's doing that. It can be a time where maybe someone in your life, if it's not a romantic partner, is just acting in a way that is unexpected at the time of this full moon. And it is something that you may be finding a little bit unsettling at different points. But it can also offer you, with the Sun-Uranus conjunction, it can also offer you this opportunity to rise in frequency when it comes to your relationships and how you relate to others. You know, Uranus can be very liberating, very freeing. And so you might have some light bulb moments about the concepts of relationships and who you're relating to and who you're connecting to and the types of people that you're connecting to, the types of people you're attracted to. Or you may have, you know, innovative thinking when it comes to your partners, when it comes to your relationships, and maybe unusual solutions to problems that you have in existing relationships. But that full moon is really spotlighting your life, Scorpio. So it's normal to feel a bit more sentimental or a little bit more sensitive at the time of that full moon. Now, there's a big focus this month on health because that full moon is happening in your 1st house of the physical body. Venus, Neptune, and then this month Saturn will all be present in your 6th house of health and well-being. So with Saturn going through the 6th house, this is all about cleaning up your habits when it comes to your health. You really feel Saturn when it enters a house. You know, you could become very aware of the additional responsibility that you might be having at your job, at your work. Some of you might be suddenly thinking, I really need to take my health more seriously. A lot of you probably did with the North Node going through Aries for the second half of 2023 and for all of 2024. You know, you might have joined a gym, you might have changed your diet, you might have got more into fitness, into exercise. Saturn here is really saying you have to commit to the long game. With Saturn going through the 6th. If you have any health issues come up as Saturn enters the sign, usually it's something that is letting you know you need to make a change. Maybe you need to change your diet, your routine, your habits. With Saturn going through here, you will be more health focused and you have more determination to make changes and more self-control, especially in Aries, self-control and self-discipline. Saturn can be quite motivating in here. The thing about it is that if you're in a phase in life where you're not taking your job or your work seriously, Saturn can manifest as a rude awakening. It can be a very tough mentor or a tough teacher, so that can manifest as getting fired, you know, but that's if you're not taking it responsibly, you're not taking your responsibilities seriously, you're not taking your job seriously. But for others of you that are working quite hard at this time, you may find that it leads to greater positions and more authority within your job. And what's interesting about this is that looking forward to next year, you know, I know Mars is in Leo now, Jupiter will be in Leo next year, so you could find that you are maybe rising up in the ranks due to your increased work efforts and responsibility, and probably getting a significant recognition next year career-wise, Scorpio, which is very positive. The Venus going through this sector all month is going to be very positive for your working relationships with your co-workers. It's very good for your relationships to your nutritionist, dietitian. It's very good for your relationship to your personal trainer. It can be a really positive one for receiving good quality services from other people. So even your hairdresser or something like that. It can also mean with Venus ruling your relationships, if you're single, you could meet someone at the gym, you could meet someone at the doctor's office, you could meet someone at your job. If you're looking for a relationship, especially as Venus is connecting with Neptune, and Neptune rules your 5th house, and they're connecting in your 6th on the 2nd of the month. So this can be a time when you meet someone through those different types of places. It may also be easier for you to communicate with a partner with Mercury going through your 7th house from the 10th to the 25th of the month, Scorpio. And you may find when Mercury connects with Taurus on the 24th, your partner has some surprising news, or there is a surprising conversation with a partner or potential partner. You may hear from someone unexpectedly. We enter Gemini season on the 20th, and we have a really nice new moon there on the 26th. And for you, this is happening in your 8th house, and this is to do with sharing. This can be a new chapter within an intimate relationship that is really rooted in talking about the tough things, having tough conversations, being more vulnerable, sharing your thoughts, sharing your feelings, with the connection to Mercury there. This can also be a time where there's a new chapter in your partner's financial situation, or it can be a new chapter with a mortgage, a loan, the bank. You know, it can be that you're getting a mortgage, getting a loan under this new moon, and you're having important communication about it. You know, there's documents to be signed, there are contracts to read, agreements to read. A lot of reading could be involved. For some of you, it could be talking, I think committing to talking more openly and expressing your thoughts and your feelings and being more vulnerable with other people. Important conversations surrounding the tough topics could be a theme in the second half of the month, and it might just be easier for you to do so, Scorpio, with all that Gemini activity happening in your 8th house. You don't tend to shy away from the tough conversations having a Gemini 8th house. It's easier for you than most people in a lot of cases to talk about the taboo, but it can still be difficult to talk about how you deeply feel or maybe share secrets with other people. And I think this new moon is going to be a chapter where you're more focused on communicating about the deeper stuff, Scorpio. It can also bring up interests in the occult, studying or reading about the occult more so. That is what I have for you, and I will talk to you soon. Hi Sagittarius, welcome to your May horoscope. Hope you're doing really well. So Sagittarius, your ruling planet Jupiter is not wildly active this month. It's still going through your partnership sector though, your relationships, helping you grow and expand in your relationships and your partnerships. And the Sun enters this sector on the 20th. So from the 20th onwards in May, you might notice that the spotlight really is on your relationships. And because Jupiter is still going through this sector, you might find that if you're single, you meet somebody who is relationship potential in May. A new relationship may begin, especially because we have a new moon in your 7th house on the 26th. And the ruler of that new moon, Mercury, is in that sector too, in a conjunction with the new moon. So it's very possible for you, Sagittarius, that this month, if you're looking for a new partnership or relationship, you might meet somebody new. It can also be that if you are in a relationship, there's a new chapter in an existing relationship. Maybe for some of you, you get engaged. Maybe for some of you, you're getting married, planning a wedding. Maybe for some of you, you're moving in together. Whatever the case may be, Sagittarius, there's a lot of opportunity for expansion and greater focus on your partnerships and relationships this month. Those relationships can also be business if that's something that you're looking for, something that you're interested in. This can help you attract new clients as well, with the Sun going through the 7th and the new moon being there also. But this can be a time as well with Mercury where maybe you're signing documentation pertaining to a relationship or partnership. So signing a lease together or getting a marriage certificate or something like that. Changing your name or something of that nature through a relationship. So there's quite a bit of focus on your partnerships. Now, there is some new energy in your 5th house this month. Venus is going through your 5th house all month, which makes this for you, Sagittarius, especially Sagittarius risings, a really positive one for love and romance and relationships, because Venus is going through the 5th house. You have Jupiter in the 7th house. Great month for love. When Venus goes through the 5th house, it brings more opportunities for romance, dating. You're more attractive to potential partners. You're more social, so you're out and about, more likely to meet people. This can be a time to go to nice restaurants, theatre. For you, it could be sports events with Venus being in Aries, or competitions and things like that. You could meet somebody there when you're socializing at these events. Or it could be for some of you that, you know, you're bringing more romance into your partnerships, into your relationships that are already existing, and more focus on date night. It can also be a more creative time with Venus going through the 5th house, and you can get on better with your children if you have them. You know, you can have nice social occasions with your kids. Can be one way that Venus in the 5th manifests as well. Now Saturn is entering this sector on the 24th, and that's the new energy that's entering. And Saturn entering the 5th house can actually be a time where you feel the spark dull just a little bit initially, because you start to reconsider what makes you happy. And Saturn is all about commitments. So it's where you're committing to something that makes you happy, or you're getting serious about what makes you happy. You know, you may consider what your talents are. You may consider what you do for fun. You might think, what part of me is different? You know, what makes you special? That kind of thing. But with Saturn going through the 5th house, it tends to be where you sort of reevaluate what makes you happy more generally, and you take a more serious approach to true authentic happiness. It can also be a time where you really do get serious about a talent that you have. You know, say for example, you've always wanted to be a writer and you're a good writer, but you're nervous about it. This might be a time when you say, okay, I'm going to take a course, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to put myself out there and sort of understand what my limitations are, because Saturn helps you face your limitations. So if you have any creative limitations or creative blocks, this can be a time to address them. And this can also be a time where if you're an artist or you're a creator, sometimes it's a little bit harder to get the recognition and the validation you want initially with Saturn going through this sector, and you really have to have faith in your own abilities and your own talents. This can also be a time where maybe there are some karmic situations going on with your children. You know, maybe for some of you, this is the time period in life where your children fly the nest, they leave, they go off to college, they go off to university, and there's a bit of distance that you weren't used to or something like that. And your children can be a bit more of a focus in your life. Maybe you're having to take on more responsibility with your kids, you know, regardless of the age that they are. You're having to be a more active parent in their life sometimes with Saturn going through the 5th. And you're taking them more seriously for whatever reason. So that can be one way that it manifests as well. But a lot of you will have more with Saturn and Aries, more self-control when it comes to your creative pursuits and your talents. So this can be a wonderful time to develop or refine a talent that you have, Sagittarius. Pluto's going retrograde in the 4th in your 3rd house. So you're sort of reinvestigating how you communicate. You're changing how you communicate. You're changing how you speak. You're also changing how you think, quite significantly with Pluto being there. Now there's a full moon in Scorpio, which is your 12th house, and it's happening on the 12th of May. And it's ruled by Pluto in your 3rd house retrograde, but also Mars in your 9th house. So this full moon is really shining a spotlight on your subconscious mind, what's behind the scenes, what's hidden. So sometimes full moons in the 12th, they can reveal secrets that you didn't know, especially because Pluto is retrograde. These secrets can be from a sibling, they can be from a neighbor, they can be buried in your subconscious, they can be memories that come up. Memories maybe pertaining to siblings, neighbours, communication, things that were said to you that really had an impact on you, Sagittarius, can come up again in this full moon. You know, when you remember something that was said or discussion and you just feel it all over again, that can be what this full moon does for you. It brings it up so that you can release it and let it go. And this can help you change your mindset. You know, you might be actively trying to change the way that you think through therapy or something of that nature, you know, really trying to reprogram your subconscious under this full moon. And that comes with sort of investigating the mind. You know, writing, journaling, talking can uproot some stuff that you've got buried in there. Now Mars being in the 9th, that's about your beliefs. So we have your subconscious beliefs and your active beliefs coming up for review. You might find that under this full moon, a dream really shifts your perspective, a secret coming out shifts your perspective and really changes the way that you view things. With Mars going through your 9th house, you might be more active when it comes to your spiritual side. So say that's going to church more, or say that is reading the Bible more, or say that is meditating more, praying more, whatever your beliefs are. You might be more active in your spiritual communities, whatever your spiritual communities are. And it can also be where you're more determined to travel, to take trips. And it can also be a time when you have more energy for studying and higher education as well, Sagittarius. And this full moon can help you maybe figure out what might be subconsciously holding you back, or what your subconscious beliefs actually are. With the full moon in the 12th house, it can also be a time when you feel a bit more sleepy and a bit more tired and you need some downtime, especially if you're very busy at work. The sun is going through your 6th house until the 20th, so you might be more active in your job, or you might be more active in the gym, or prioritizing your health and your well-being, and you might be exerting a lot of energy. And this full moon comes around and says it's time for a rest, it's time for a retreat, it's time for a nap, Sagittarius. And as I said, then we have, a lot of activity happening in your relationship. So there's a pretty significant shift happening for you this month, I think, when it comes to your romantic life, especially if you are single and you're looking to meet somebody. It's a great month for that. But it's also a great month for just beginning new relationships generally, or resetting existing relationships, not even necessarily romantic, but, really considering how you communicate in relationships and how you talk to each other. Pluto going retrograde can really help you make transformations when it comes to how you communicate with other people more broadly. Because Pluto rules your subconscious, I think for a lot of you, you could be noticing where you have patterns from the past that are affecting how you communicate now. And sometimes that can be choosing not to say something, and sometimes it can be how you say it. But either way, Sagittarius, I think you're a bit focused on changing how you speak to other people. There is a Venus-Neptune conjunction in your 5th house on the 2nd, which could be a very romantic, artistic and creative day if you want to make the most of it, Sagittarius. But that is what I have for you. I hope you have a great month, and I will talk to you soon. Hi Capricorn, welcome to May 2025. Hope you're doing really well. So Capricorn, big change for you this month. Your ruling planet Saturn is changing signs. Saturn is going to be moving into Aries on the 24th, and this is a brief stint. Saturn won't officially enter and settle into Aries until the beginning of 2026, because Saturn will actually retrograde back into Pisces in September. But for now, this is really going to shift your priorities and your focus towards your home and your family. Now, your priorities may already be there, but it's just that it brings a more intense focus onto these themes. Saturn going through the 4th house, how this can manifest for you, Capricorn, is that you can be a bit more serious about home and family matters. When Saturn goes through the 4th house, you can find that you want to lay roots. Maybe you want to move somewhere that is more of a forever type home. If your living situation is temporary or not suitable, you might want to move somewhere that you can perhaps build a family, or you can perhaps see yourself living for a very long term. You can be quite serious about property and moving. And obviously Saturn is a karmic planet, so sometimes these moves can be frustrating, or they can be slow, or there can be some sort of restriction in getting them off the ground. This can also be a time where you find that you have simply more self-discipline within the home. People might notice to you that you keep things incredibly clean, incredibly organized. Some of you might actually find with Saturn going through the 4th house that you want to clear out your house. You want a more minimalistic approach to your home. You don't want clutter. Venus going through this sector this month, though, can help you bring in things that make your house look beautiful. It's beautiful for redecorating. It's a lovely transit for soft furnishings, finding the right accessories for the home. And you might notice this month that you're able to decorate the way that you want to create the ambience that you want. But I think with Saturn now in this sector, you might find that you are taking your home quite seriously, or you're more serious about your living situation, or more dedicated or committed to your family. You might have additional responsibilities to family members with this transit as well. And it can also be a time where you sort of notice where you may have picked up limiting beliefs from your family, from your formative years, and how they're applying to your everyday existence. And this can be something that is maybe a bit frustrating. And sometimes Saturn going through the fourth can bring an element of temporary coldness or distance with family. Sometimes it coincides where you may have moved to a different country and there's physical distance with your family. That can be one example of this. Or you might find that maybe there's a bit of a strain in a relationship with a family member and you are not feeling as close at certain points of that time period. Doesn't mean it's permanent, but it can sometimes bring a bit of distance at times or a bit of coldness at times with Saturn going through the fourth house. And it might also make you very dedicated to your private life rather than your professional life. But it can certainly be a time where you maybe get very serious about a home. Some astrologers say that you don't really move during Saturn going through the fourth, but I have noticed as Saturn has gone through Pisces, a lot of Sagittarius risings around me did move or did start families or did lay roots and things like that. You know, Saturn can really help us build solid foundations. So if that's something you're looking to do, this might be the time when you get very focused on it, Capricorn. Now, you may also be going through a period of financial review. Pluto is going to go retrograde in your sector of income on the 4th, so you might be addressing your financial situation and maybe reviewing where you could make some changes. Pluto rules your 11th house of friendships and social connections, and this is being highlighted on the 12th with a full moon in Scorpio. So that full moon could be a social one for you, Capricorn. You could be getting together with friends, you could be going to a party, going to a networking event. If you have an event to go to, just be mindful that if you have children, they might disrupt your plans a little bit. You know, they might act up last minute, or they might have given you the wrong details of an event of theirs or something. That's because the full moon is opposite Uranus in your 5th house. So if you have children, they might be acting up, or they could be a little bit disruptive in your social plans. Or there could be some disruptions coming up in their social life as well that you're interested in. The full moon in the 11th can also highlight the accomplishment of an aspiration or a goal for you, Capricorn. And for a lot of you, I think when it comes to your financial situation, you're reviewing your financial situation, you're reviewing how you make money, the money that you make. You might find out in this full moon that a friend says something that impacts how you think about your money. It can also be that when it comes to your friendships, you're very much focused on your values, if you have the same values or not. And I think with that full moon in Scorpio highlighting your friendship sector, you could be very focused on your social connections and how maybe they would help you improve your financial situation, or they would help you with confidence, self-worth, self-value. With that full moon, it can highlight those matters. But full moons in the 11th tend to be quite social. They can bring up some friendship milestones or changes as well. And there could perhaps be changes when it comes to the team that you're a part of. And you may feel a little bit like there's some disruptions to your team that you work with, or you may find there's some disruptions to your social life with that full moon. Now, you may actually find that until the 20th, with the sun going through your 5th house, you really want to have a good time this month, Capricorn. You want to enjoy yourself, you want to have a party, you want to go to a party, you want to socialize, you want to be silly, you want to, you know, go to concerts, go to the theatre, go to anything that really feels lively and fun to you. I think for a lot of you it could be a concert, theatre, going out for dinner, going out to eat, going on dates, you know, having more romance in your life with the sun going through Taurus. There can be some surprises in this area because of the Sun-Uranus conjunction in Taurus in the 17th. But it can also bring a higher frequency where you have, you know, an epiphany when it comes to dating, an epiphany when it comes to creativity, an epiphany when it comes to what makes you happy. And you might be feeling quite excitable around that time. There could be a fun and exciting social event coming up for you in May for sure, Capricorn. And then we shift gears and you become all about work. The sun enters your 6th house on the 20th and we have a new moon there on the 26th. So it looks like there's a new chapter for a lot of you when it comes to your job. Capricorn, you could be starting a new job, starting a new role. You could have a reset when it comes to your job, how you approach work. With Mercury conjunct that new moon, some of you could be assigning a contract for a new job. Some of you could be having to write for your job. You could have a lot of emails, a lot of communication, important discussions when it comes to your work and what you're going to be doing. This can also be for some of you a reset with your health. New moons in the 6th tend to coincide with starting at the gym, starting a new diet, starting a new exercise routine. And for a lot of you with Mercury in the mix, you might be very interested in learning everything that you can about this new way of eating, this new way of living, this new lifestyle, or even this new job. If it's a new job, you might have quite a lot of reading, Capricorn. But this can also be for some of you maybe a new doctor, a new PT, a new healthcare practitioner of some kind, where you feel the communication is very productive and there's some very positive discussions or more information with Mercury very happy in Gemini. So the second half of the month for you, Capricorn, is putting a lot of focus on your routines. And you might find that you want a bit of a reset in how you approach your day, how you approach your health, and how you approach your work. So for some Capricorn risings, that could be a new job or a new role, or maybe even for some of you, that full moon in Scorpio, changes to your team that you work with, changes in your friendship circle, and a lot of networking and opportunities for socializing in May, Capricorn. That is what I have for you, and I will talk to you soon. Hi Aquarius, welcome to your May horoscope. Hope you're all doing really well. So Aquarius, Pluto is going to be going retrograde in your sign on the 4th of May. May the 4th be with you. So Pluto retrograde in your sign, you're reinvestigating your sense of self. I think for a lot of you, you could be looking at your personal style, looking at your appearance. You know, you might have undergone some physical changes or a significant shift in how you style yourself since Pluto entered your sign in March 2023. And you could be reevaluating how you show up to the world and your approach to life. You know, Pluto going through the first house, it can bring big physical changes. You know, for some women, that's pregnancy. For some people, that is changing their style altogether. It can also be significant personality shifts. I think for a lot of you, Aquarius, you might actually be reconsidering your personal style and your personal approach when it comes to your career. So for some of you with that full moon in Scorpio on the 12th, there could be job changes. You could be more public. You could be in the public eye. You could be, you know, very much witnessed by a lot of people at this time, probably professionally. You could find yourself more in the spotlight. Maybe you have a job interview. Maybe you have a new job coming up. Maybe you're leaving a job. Maybe you have a public announcement. Maybe you have something you want to put out to the world. And I think a lot of you could be reconsidering your approach to your public life. That could be reconsidering your style. That could be changing how you dress for work. Pluto can bring power dressing, status dressing. It can be changing how you show up to public events, how you show up to your job and how you approach it. It can certainly put you more in the spotlight with that full moon in your career sector. So around the 12th, there could be a significant shift when it comes to your job or your career. Some of you could be leaving a job, some of you could be offered a job or something of that nature. Because it's ruled by Pluto in your first house in retrograde, I think a lot of you are rethinking how you show up to the world or how you contribute to your own public image or how you approach work. Or maybe you are feeling like you're starting a job or you're moving to the next level in your career and you're having to shift how you show up. You know, maybe it's changing how you approach life or how you show up to the world because of a job title or position change or something like that. It's also ruled by, because Pluto is the modern ruler, Mars is the traditional. Mars is in your 7th house of relationships. So for some of you, this could be with the full moon in the 10th house and Mars being in the 7th, making a relationship public. Or it could be, you know, beginning a professional partnership. Aligning yourself with somebody else professionally can be one way that this plays out. You know, maybe you have a professional collaboration that you're putting out there, or you're reaching a goal with another person, Aquarius. So there's a lot happening where you're rethinking who you are, how you show up to the world, especially professionally this month. Now the sun is going through your sector of home and family. Uranus is there, and the sun and Uranus get into their annual conjunction on the 17th, which is after the full moon. This can bring some surprises or significant shocks even when it comes to your home and family and living situation. For some of you, that could just be something surprising happening within the home. It can just be maybe there's some disruptions with Uranus, maybe you're getting work done in the home. A family member might surprise you with some news, or you could be planning a move. But there's a lot of focus on your home environment. Until the 20th, your living situation is going to take a lot of your focus, Aquarius. Now, we do have Venus in your 3rd house all month. So this can be really lovely for romantic communication, talking to somebody, messaging somebody. This can also be really pleasant for communication overall, because when Venus goes through the 3rd house, it's easier for you to find the right words, it's easier for you to find the right thing to say. And this can be beautiful for writing, and this can be beautiful for communication overall. Now, what's interesting about the 3rd house for you is that Saturn, which is your traditional ruling planet, is entering your 3rd house on the 24th, which is a significant shift. But Saturn going through the 3rd house can sometimes, unlike Venus, sometimes it can be harder to find the right thing to say, because you take your word very seriously. When Saturn goes through the 3rd house, your word is your bond, and you're very serious about what you say, what you verbally commit to. There can be quite karmic lessons around communication. This can also bring an element of dedication to learning or studying or even writing. So some of you, this is a great transit if you want to finally write that book. You can commit to it long term. If you want to start that podcast, it can be very slow but steady progress with Saturn. You have the commitment, you have the self-control, but I think for a lot of you, it's really looking to me like verbal discipline. It can also just be that you find the day-to-day humdrum effects of life quite frustrating and overbearing at points. You know, with Saturn, it can be having to take your schedule very seriously. It can be even taking your mindset can be a bit more serious. You could have a bit more of a somber disposition in terms of your thinking, and it can bring up karmic relationships with siblings and neighbors. So sometimes Saturn can bring a bit of limitation or restriction there. So that can be periods of maybe distancing yourself from a sibling or a neighbor, or having a neighbor that is somewhat difficult. But Saturn is going through the sector to effectively refine your communication skills with this time. So I think for a lot of you, you might be really putting your mind to something quite seriously, whether that be writing a book, writing in general, reading, learning, education. A lot of you could be very dedicated to, a course that you're taking as well. Say you get involved in something that interests you and you're taking workshops on it, you could get very invested in that as well, Aquarius. So the sun enters Gemini on the 20th, and this is quite lovely for matters of the heart. Jupiter is in your romantic sector. It's been in your romantic sector since the spring of last year. It will leave in June. And as the sun goes into Gemini, this can really put the spotlight on your love life. So this can be a lovely time for dating. It can be a lovely time to fall in love, to begin a romantic relationship. And with that new moon in Gemini on the 26th, which is ruled by Mercury in Gemini, conjunct the new moon, all happening in your 5th house, including Jupiter, you might find that new love is on the horizon for a lot of you if you're single. You might also find that this is a new beginning in terms of children or pregnancy. So if you're looking to get pregnant, this new moon might be the time. This might also be a time when you find out you're pregnant. But this can be a new moon that's a new chapter in the life of your children as well. So if you have kids, this could be them, for example, starting school, or this could be them getting some sort of education opportunity, or this could just be a new chapter in how you approach parenting. For others of you, this could be creative in nature. This could be a new creative outlet, a new creative passion, a new creative hobby on the horizon for you. But when the sun goes through your 5th house, yes, it brings up matters of love and romance. It also brings up fun more generally, having a good time, getting to enjoy yourself, not taking life so seriously. You might find with Saturn in your 3rd house, you have a more serious mindset. But with Jupiter in the 5th, there's a lot of opportunities for fun, joy, positive occasions, happy times, finding happiness, Aquarius. And I think for a lot of you, that can be a very fun, exciting second half of the month when it comes to just enjoying yourself, just having a good time. Maybe for some of you dating, maybe for some of you romancing, or bringing more romance into your life more generally. Don't forget Mars is in your partnership sector, which can bring a lot of activity and a lot of action when it comes to partnerships and relationships. So for single Aquarians, this might be a very positive month in terms of connecting with others, particularly romantically, but also creatively for a lot of you. That is what I have for you, Aquarius, and I will talk to you soon. Hi Pisces, welcome to your May horoscope. Hope you're doing really well. So Pisces, Saturn is leaving your sign this month. Saturn has been in your sign since March 2023, and Saturn will return to your sign a little bit later on in the year for its final stint. But this month, Saturn is moving into your second house. So how is this going to manifest for you? Well, Saturn having gone through your sign has probably given you better boundaries, more responsibility, more personal commitment. It has probably been like refining a diamond for you, Pisces, where you have matured and, you know, I guess taken yourself more seriously and taken your life more seriously. You might notice an instant shift with Saturn moving into Aries, that you feel a little bit less heavy, truthfully, with Saturn going through your first house. But as I say, Saturn will be back for the final lessons, and you're going to take that newfound sense of self and maturity and apply it to the real world now. So Saturn going through your second house, Saturn in Aries, it might give you better self-control when it comes to your spending. You're likely to be more serious about money. That can be because you have something that you are financially responsible for, be it a loan, a mortgage, be it a home, a family, whatever the case may be. You might have significant responsibilities and commitments that you're investing in financially, and that could make you more frugal otherwise. This can be a time when you take your money and your finances more seriously, and sometimes it can be frustrating with Saturn here because you feel like maybe your money isn't growing with how hard you work. You could notice parts of your life where you're working and you feel you don't have quite the same financial payout that you feel you deserve. But Saturn can also bring about lessons when it comes to what is blocking you financially, or what is stopping you getting the rewards that you deserve, but also what truly matters to you. You know, Neptune is now in your second house, so your values are shifting. It can bring a bit of fluctuations to your self-confidence, so be wary of other people trying to take advantage of you with your finances, you know, like scammers and things like that. But I think this month, financially speaking, you're in a good position because Venus is in your second house for this month, so you can be attracting more money. There can be an improvement in your financial situation. You have, with the retrograde, reviewed your spending, and I think a lot of you are thinking you want to take it a bit more seriously. You want to take your money and your finances a bit more seriously, while also wanting to be a little less attached to them with Neptune there. And for a lot of you, I think Neptune going through the second house now is going to be about making money through your own personality, by who you are, your natural talents and gifts and that type of thing, Pisces. Now there's also a bit of a spiritual shift for you this month more generally. We have a full moon in your 9th house, and this is highlighting foreign travel, this is highlighting your higher education, but it's also highlighting your beliefs. And before this full moon in the 12th, Pluto goes retrograde on the 4th, and Pluto is the ruling planet of Scorpio in the modern sense. With Pluto retrograde in the 12th, you may be reflecting, going over at your dreams. You might be, looking up what your dreams mean. They can be a bit more vivid, especially if you're having nightmares and things like that. I think a lot of you could be doing some intense shadow work, and it could be a time when you're really investigating your subconscious and sort of reflecting on how that's going. With Pluto going through the 12th, it is more natural for you to want to study the subconscious mind, want to study the intangible things, connection to spirit, mediumship, that type of thing, Pisces. And that full moon can really highlight your spiritual connections. It can also be a full moon where you are actually traveling, or you have an unexpected opportunity to travel through someone else. Maybe you unexpectedly have to travel. Maybe you get news or a text or communication. Maybe you get text or communication from abroad. A big reason for that, Pisces, is that the sun is going through your 3rd house until the 20th. So especially from the 10th to the 20th, when Mercury is there, a lot of communication, a lot of back and forth, a lot of messages, a lot of emails, a lot of busyness. You might find it hard to get your head out of a book. You might find yourself very interested in poems, interested in books that you're reading, podcasts that you're listening to. And you could be feeling quite highly strung energetically with Uranus being there. The Sun and Uranus connect on the 17th, so you might be finding that you have unexpected communication, unexpected conversations, or very unusual conversations, quite lively discussions. And one of the things that I really like about the annual Sun-Uranus meetup is that it can offer a higher frequency. So you might get a light bulb moment. You know, your mindset might shift. You read something, you hear something, you think, eureka, I understand this, or I see this differently now. And it can really help you elevate your mindset. And with that full moon in Scorpio, you're wanting to have more of a bird's eye view of what's going on around you. So for some of you, it could really bring up your spiritual beliefs. And I will say, if you were in a position where you maybe had some religious trauma, Pluto retrograde and that full moon can bring that up to the surface as well. And it can bring up any phobias you have or fear you have of maybe going back to school or going back to university or something of that nature, Pisces. We do also have a lot of focus on your home and your family this month. The Sun enters your 4th house in the 20th, meaning that takes your priority. You know, that's what you're focused on, your home, your family, your living situation, your living space, how it feels. We have a new chapter coming in that sector for you on the 26th. We have this lovely, lively new moon in your home sector. So for one Pisces rising, this can be renovating or redecorating the home, you know, bringing in fresh energy. For another Pisces, it can be buying a home. You know, Jupiter is in this sign as well, and this can be a new moon where you do commit to a new chapter with your home. You know, you do buy, you do move, you do renovate, you do expand your family. It can also be a new chapter with your family members, you know, a new way of communicating, a new way of discussing. I think for a lot of you with Mercury being there, you might be signing contracts or signing documents or having important conversations pertaining to the home, the living situation. And if none of these things are happening now, Pisces, you could simply use this new moon as an opportunity to manifest, you know, to set intentions, to write them down, to figure out what you want for your living space. With Jupiter being in your family sector, you are very focused on that overall. So there may be a shift under this new moon where you want to begin a new chapter, whether that be your relationship to a family member, whether that be what your routines are within your own family, or whether that be that you're wanting to buy, rent, sell, whatever the case may be. A new chapter in your home life, Pisces. And we do have this Sun-Mercury conjunction on the 30th, so there could be news or important conversations happening then as well. The first half of the month with, you know, the Sun in the 3rd could be very busy for you with your neighbours, with your siblings, spending a lot of time with them, spending a lot of time in the car, taking short trips, taking road trips. It can also be important conversations, emails being thrown about. And again, having a bit of a eureka moment with your identity. But I also do think you will probably, or with your mindset rather, I also think you will probably with Mars being in your 6th house, be quite busy with work, be quite busy with your job. There could be a lot to do. There could be a lot of movement. There could be a lot of activity. And a lot of you might also be absolutely killing it in the gym, you know, with your sports, with your fitness. Mars going through this sector is great for running a marathon. It's great for sweating out your anger in the gym, boxing, running, anything like that that can help you put your energy out, and so that your energy doesn't get channeled, you know, your frustrations don't get channeled into your co-workers or your job, because Mars can bring a bit of hostility, so co-workers can be annoying or challenging when Mars goes through the 6th house. But I think overall, Pisces, this month it could be quite busy for you in the first half, and then you start to focus more on the home and your private life in the second half. That is what I have for you. I hope you have a great month, and I will talk to you soon.